Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekly Manga Recap. It's February the 12th of 2024. Here we are again, Quinn. We got a manga recommendation for everybody.
And
It's good times on Weekly Manga Recap today.
this might even feel like a nostalgic episode, Nick, because when is it where we've dug back into that glorious gold mine that was late 2000s, early 2010s, shonen-esque, very horny and strange weirdness, you know? Like, we built a name for ourselves talking about series like Prince of Tennis and Air Gear and things of that nature. And I don't want to go out on a limb and say that this is anywhere near as bad as any of those series. It's significantly shorter than most of those. But we're going to be talking about today some grade A manga garbage. Like honestly, truly spectacular at times what this series gets across. Like, it's been a while since I've been able to text like a vague normie friend with just like, here's what happened in this manga, and have them be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's Gamblefish, everybody. This is a series actually that Quinn talked about way back in the day on the podcast.
Did I?
Kind of, yeah. I don't know if it was like a chapter by chapter basis, but you definitely did talk about it to at least some extent.
I did read the series back in the day, but I never finished it. So this, for me, even though I was rereading a lot, I stopped. The last thing
lucky late 2000s, you.
I remember stopping after the flag mission, basically, with Emily.
Right.
So everything else after that was new. It's also where I feel like the series significantly dipped off in, like, I don't want to say quality, but whatever it had, it started to go down.
It's been a long time since I feel like we've read a series that had such a very clear demarcation of when the quality drops. Like, it's not like the series was phenomenal up until that point, but it really, really gets bad after there, where they go to Macau and they do the gambling tournament thing at the end. We're kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
We are.
I think our overall thoughts. We're talking about Gamblefish, which is by Hiromi Aoyama and Kazutoshi Yamane. Ran in Weekly Shonen Champion from 2007 to 2010. Ran for 168 chapters, collected in 19 volumes. So a nice, respectable length run to get across what they wanted to. Although it's kind of, I'm going to be starting off with the way that the series begins, and just keep in mind that at many different points, the series appears to forget what its premise is, and just kind of like have more a vague idea of the vibe it's supposed to be going off of, as opposed to things like, plot hooks and character consistency.
Things making sense, yeah.
So we start off with a 14 or 15-year-old kid named Tomo Shirasagi. He starts attending, gets transferred into this prep school called Shishido, like junior high, or Shishido Academy, I think it is. And he is there with the purpose of ruining them financially. He's trying to essentially bankrupt them by doubling down on what start off as small bets with the student body. As in, he has in the first chapter a bet with a student and he wins 100 yen from them, which is $1 basically. And then he has a series of contests thereafter where the next one is for $2, the next one is for $4, $8, and so on. Does not stick with that
Yeah,
gimmick
it
for long.
explodes very much, and then it's
Someone
just forgotten.
realized that if you wait 5 contests and you're only competing for $32, that maybe we should accelerate this a little bit.
Maybe the stakes need to be raised a little bit.
It's like, yes, the 1 grain of rice double each day thing, that does get very fast very quickly, but it takes a little while for it to start accelerating.
That first week kind of sucks. You're like, oh.
Man,
I just have like,
grains of rice.
yeah,
right?
I just have 64 grains of rice. This sucks, or whatever.
So
I had to do some quick math there on the fly, by the way. I hope it wasn't too wrong. Nick,
I'm not going to even listen. The way that this series treats math, I'm going to not hold you accountable for anything on this, Quinn.
And
it's
honestly,
okay.
The way it treats women, we don't really contribute a whole lot. So, sometimes you just pull back and you let the big, strong man take care of this.
I had a frustrating experience reading this manga because it starts off, I think, very promising. It has the vibe of early Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of there is this remarkably competent, non-traditional gamer protagonist who uses, psychology and effective strategy and gambits to get his opponents to underestimate him and then take advantage of their weaknesses as people to take them for stuff that, in a way that makes it feel like, oh, they deserved to lose. And that's definitely how it feels in the first several, where, people are like flaunting their wealth and the fact that he is an outsider, and so he doesn't really have any allies within the school to use that against him, and then he just uses their trying to have unfair advantages against him to instead turn the tables on them. It's exemplified very well in like the first chapter, where the gamble is on, I'll bet that I can find this coin wherever you hide it in this room. And there are all sorts of fake hiding places that are like written down on pieces of paper that the guy he's competing against and a bunch of his allies have written down. And because he has so many guys working with him, Tomu realizes, well, he's not going to actually write down where he's written it. He's going to try and cheat. But because he has so many people helping him, that just lets him narrow down the possible hiding locations where it isn't. And there's something very simple and satisfying about that. When people try and cheat, it's because they try and cheat that he ends up winning the day, especially early on. Where I thought that things started to get weird, first of all, that mountain contest that you referred to has nothing to do with any of that. It feels very strange compared to literally anything else that happens in the series, because it's capture the flag and tag, basically.
Yes.
And also, how do I put this? If there's a character you like in this manga, you won't by the end of this series. It's very, very frustrating. My 2 favorite characters in this manga were Yuka and Rio. And
oh man, I think those are like
the 2 worst I could have taken.
Is Yuki the magician girl?
Yuka is the magician.
Yeah, those are the 2 that I really liked as well. And man, Yuka gets opportunities to be in the forefront, but she does not get to contribute. This is, I would say, a Tomu exclusive manga. Like, there are series out there that just exist where it's like, yeah, the main character is the one who kind of solves 99% of the problem. That was our big criticism with like Black Clover for a while. Was like, oh, this really only is about Asta, stuff like that. I can't even say that, because like the last third of this manga is giving matches to people that don't involve Tomu whatsoever, but they just don't involve the rest of the cast either. They just kind of make up new people that you pay attention to for a little bit, and you're like, I don't quite understand why we're doing this, because it is confusing and seems to make it make all the other characters look worse. Like, they couldn't have been in these weird spots either.
It's because, of course, in this type of series where, gambling relies upon deduction, seeing through facades and cheating, that kind of thing. And one of the characters that is introduced very early on, Yuka shows up in like chapter 6 and is like the third person that Tomu has a contest against. It's the first time that like something very fantastic in terms of the gambling in this series takes place, because she is a close-up magician.
Yes.
She has challenged Tomu to basically a game of blackjack where she's the dealer. And because she is such a skilled magician, she can freely manipulate the position of the cards to always give herself a winning hand and always give Tomu a losing hand, no matter what he does. And so Tomu gets around this by putting up his finger as leverage and brings his own chainsaw for it. And the villain of the series chops off his finger with the chainsaw, and he bleeds all over the deck. And because he's bled all over the deck, now people will know if Yuka is manipulating the position of the cards in some way because of the blood stains around the edges. She can't do it anymore.
There was a facade before that no one could prove that she was cheating, even though they all knew it. But once he's bled all over the deck, there is no more facade. It'll be extremely obvious as she switches cards out.
So he wins because of that, and because he stops her from making the same bet, because for him it's like, well, it's okay if I lose a finger and get it reattached, but for her, the hands are, a magician's life. So he stops her from doing that, and she falls in love with him along with every girl in this series.
If you're a woman in this series and you go up against Tomu, you're either his mom or you fall in love with him.
I guess Rio technically doesn't. She's it's never confirmed that she's flat in love with him. She cares a lot for him, at least. So
she unfortunately exists in his greater harem of characters. So it's indecipherable what role she has towards the series. But no, you are correct. She doesn't express a ton of affection towards him. She is almost certainly into Rose Lady, whose name I forget. But
yes,
we can't address that.
Can't have that happen.
That's just for fan fiction.
Right. Is there fan fiction of this series?
There has to be.
So Yuka in this introductory arc is put forward as this very skilled magician who knows a lot of secrets, can see through a lot of tricks, can manipulate a lot of tricks herself. And so her role in the series is to kind of investigate stuff as Tomu is, coming up against people who are trying to cheat against him, so that she can, basically eliminate possibilities of these different tricks. And she never solves them herself. It's like when you beat a boss in an RPG and they join the party. Mm-hmm. Just every character that Tomu beats and joins Team Shirasaki afterwards, their abilities go drastically down in terms of their competence.
Or it's just never relevant again. Like,
no.
Could Yuka or whatever her name is, do her close-up magic? And sure, it's just she's never involved in a situation where it would matter. So I guess she could still do it, theoretically, in the background, in her mind.
But what if we just had her get stripped instead? What if we just did that?
What if her clothes
maybe that would be
came
better.
Off? Yeah.
What if she showed off her body and didn't like it? What if we just did that instead?
I note, I don't want to bury the lead on this. We've got a lot to say on this. We also have a lot of manga to talk about, so we can't spend a ton of time talking about Gamblefish. But the series is very horny, aggressively horny, and it reaches a high point kind of after that period I talked about. The mountain flag chase is a little horny, but once they go to Macau, every arc, for some reason, a bunch of women are just their clothes are getting taken off of them. They have to use their clothes to help survive the weird circumstances they're in. For some reason, they were gassed and kidnapped and are paralyzed to serve nude as like the card drawing board. It's wild how frequently women are being like abused in it. And that is the part, by the way, that takes place in front of an audience. So all that's supposed to be like for the crowd. Like everyone's gonna go crazy for this.
I was writing down and noting, so I have a notebook that I'm going to try and use for stuff from now on whenever we're covering series for the show. And I started writing down whenever there is specifically an uncomfortable or gross fan service moment. This is not even like, keep in mind, this is not even when there's like a sexy shower scene, a sexy hot, a sexy onsen scene, or just one of the many, 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 many pinup cover pages that happen throughout this series. There are so many of those. I didn't even bother to count those. I would have had to fill up maybe 3 more pages for those. So I've got stuff like, oh, the time when, the pool shark that for some reason sticks around for a lot of this series, the time that he uses his pool cue to sexually harass Natsumi. The other time he fantasizes about doing it. The time that Yuka has diarrhea and somehow this is erotic. The time that Hiroko, has a reputation for going into compensated dating. She's 14. The time that they have a stripping contest because it's the first girl versus girl contest in the series. Every time that there's 2 female characters that go up against each other, there has to be a stipulation that they have to strip if they're losing or something like that.
Whoa, hey, hold on there, Nick. One
sorry,
time,
they don't strip in the second one. What am I talking about? They're already in their swimsuits.
They're in bikinis for that one,
already
being attacked by
cum fish
or orgasm fish. God, I need to explain that match at some point. By the way, that is truly
we can get to it.
Yeah,
definitely. And it gets to a point eventually where I stopped writing down individual instances because we get into that tournament. And I just had to write down just ranges of chapters because that was the entire gimmick for these. So about halfway down the page, I just got to chapter 114 through 119, chapter 128 through 138, 139, 142 through 154. So of the last 60 chapters in this series, 50 of them have this stuff going on in them. It's ridiculous how much this is going on and how it's depicted as well, because as you said, it's an audience of people, and it's not an audience of the students at the school that this allegedly takes place at. It is in a secret gambling black underground area where gross middle-aged dudes are gawking at these 15-year-old girls. There is a moment in a mild example of this where they're playing, it's called perfect poker, and Tomu agrees because he has to, I guess, that every time he folds a hand, one of the girls with him will take off an article of clothing, and they're put on an elevated stage where middle-aged dudes are gawking at them. And Yuka tries to just project confidence in this situation, and so she's like, all right, fine, let's do this, and she takes her dress off, and the guys are like, if she's not embarrassed, it's not hot. Just makes it even grosser.
There's a very uncomfortable element of the fan service in this series, in that very little of it is ever consensual. So many times it a character will just be in this situation, and the explanation for why will just be someone grabbed them and forced them into it, and you're like, well, that's disturbing and I hate that, so can we stop doing that? And it just gets kind of more egregious and oftentimes very confusing. There's a match, there's a 4-person mahjong match that they kidnap 4 of the girls to all be sort of essentially prisoners during this, and you're just how did we get to this point? This is way, I understand that the person running the competition is a bad dude and he's trying to fuck with Tomu by constantly involving his party, but it's never ending that some poor girl is going to be roped into a situation that's just gonna kind of be horny against her will. It sucks.
I came to a weird conclusion while I was reading this, because I will at least give the series this, which is that except for the semifinals matches in that tournament, it's never boring. I had such a hard time getting through that part. I was just skipping. I was not absorbing anything. I was
I can tell you the exact point.
well.
I kind of faded out is when you get to the match between whoever the Russian mobster guy is and like the Japanese Yakuza guy or something like that.
He's Russian. He's from the mafia.
I don't know. It was like a mob dude and like a Yakuza dude. And I was just like, I tried one of these matches and I don't give a shit about either of the two characters here. And I don't give a shit about the secret third character they inserted into this. So, yeah, I'm just going to start flashing through this one. I did like the start of this series a little bit, though. As I said, I used to read this. So, like, obviously, it was still kind of horny early on. But, like, I genuinely found the way that Tomu kind of, like, got into a dramatic situation be really satisfying. You mentioned the finger thing already. There was usually, like, one instance per big arc where he would do something that would be like extremely dramatic and it'd be really cool. Even if you weren't able to follow all the rules of the game, that was the moment where you're like, I'm locked in. Tomu's doing some cool shit. I think there's like one where like he has to like roll the dice while he's underneath like a burning cauldron of fire, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it's just like this very cool moment. It's another moment where a bunch of characters have to get naked, but that's consensual. They all agree to give Tomu.
They all agree to it.
Yeah.
By the way, before we get away from the stripping naked point, not stripping naked, stripping down to their underwear. Every single time a girl has to get down to her underwear, she is wearing incredibly expensive lingerie.
The fanciest.
Very frilly, so many ribbons, many.
Not one girl owns like one pair of just normal ass briefs.
There's no sports bras in this manga. Just
everything is the most convoluted or extravagant two-piece set you've ever seen.
It's even confusing when they do the four girls who are dressed up erotically thing, because Yuka's made to like dress up like a volleyball player in that one, and she's still got really lavish lingerie under it. And it's like, why?
I don't know. There's a lot of that sort of stuff. It's very, very strange. Look, I get why some of that stuff is in this series. By the fact that it was still going on at some point, like I think it ran out of steam, but it's like, I can keep going a little bit longer. I take all these girls' clothes off, though. But eventually you kind of reach that, like, Lucy saturation where you're just like, I've seen this so many times. Who could possibly, you know? I just kind of enjoyed how silly and over the top the series is. Like, that's where it's at its high point, is that this is a wild, crazy series. Like, people are doing absurd things constantly. A character just drives a tank into the school. It is not a thing whatsoever. She does it. No one ever talks about it again. But it's just like the extravagance of it. They like eventually one of his opponents is a girl who's like essentially the Queen of America. They're like, she is an American Harris. She is like the daughter of a very like popular company, and she is so powerful within America that literally with just a call, she can get the actual Green Berets to play a game with her. And I'm like, that's so fucking ludicrous. I love it. Like, it's ridiculous and weird, and that's when the series, I think, is at its most fun, is when it's like, hey, don't take this too seriously. This is kind of silly nonsense. It just very frequently then tries to be like, but we still have a plot. Don't forget our plot. And here's a girl.
Do you remember what the plot is? Like,
so I know that Tomu is attempting to get all this money, and he's also searching for the whereabouts of his father, who disappeared after facing Adebini or Abadani. And eventually it is revealed he wants that whatever 1.2 billion or whatever it is, because he wants to get the he's trying to find the twin herons, which is like
an artifact
of some importance to him.
Right. Also, there's a whole thing involving math and how Abidani thinks that he's found like the formula to like the universe and immortality and all that stuff. Some, like Pi bullshit, like the movie Pi. And he thinks that it allowed him to escape death because he went to a gambling ring for a thrill. He got put in an electric chair. It went off, and then the power went out. So it turned him into a demon? Question mark. Um, whatever, it doesn't matter. He looks like an actual like vampire demon thing with pointed ears and fangs and shit. I feel like the series probably reaches peak for me. I would say in that 3-on-3 team battle that ends with the Cauldron of Fire thing. Because that was the last time it felt like, okay, there's like satisfying games that are happening that have an interesting twist. I didn't really have a problem with the mountain thing, although it gets really weird in a lot of different senses. There's a lot. That's where like
magic. There's a magic eyeball in this series. It never comes up.
Never
again.
Shows up after that point. It just stops working, and she never uses it again.
They explicitly try to like refute that there's any magic or supernatural stuff in the world going forward at that point. Anytime it comes up, they're like, "No, that doesn't exist." There's a perfectly logical scientific explanation for this. But do not forget that one character gets a fucking Sharingan at one point.
But I would say that arc also really exposes like that the series just doesn't seem to be interested in satisfying like character growth or development.
Sure.
Because by that point, Tomu has a series of allies that he's, like previously defeated, and they're just bodies to fill out the team. Yuka's there, Natsumi, who is basically just a cheerleader for the team, is there. And in the prior team battle, she was like, I'm gonna, prove that I'm not just, a load to you. And no, she just is. She never makes any meaningful contribution to Tomu or the team in any way throughout the series.
Yeah.
So she really is as useless as Tomu assessed that she was in that one arc where he very callously discarded her. So I guess he was just right about that. And that sucks. He's got an ace magician on his team who never does anything for him with those abilities. Nope. And that sucks. The teammate that does the most for him is Mushroom, is Mizuhara, is the glasses boy, who does have like a nice moment in the 3-on-3 team battle where he like manages to pull off a big gambit Tomu style by winning this like dice stacking game in a clever way. But then when they get to Macau, he just becomes very rapidly one of the worst characters in the story.
They make him so bad. Like character ruiningly bad. Like this is assassination for any fucking Mushroom Head fans out there.
I mean, I will say the first time they did it, when he was just having the poker match against the guy and they revealed he likes going on strip poker games and stuff like that. And he's got like a renowned reputation for going through there because he's a secret pervert.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine. But then from that point on, he's the pervert character. That's all that he is.
They took from that less the poker stuff and more that he's like a fan of stripping. And that's just like his thing going forward. He's like, I am the master stripper. And you're like, thought the poker thing would have been fine, but whatever. You know what? Who cares? This is some nonsense. And I'll be honest, maybe he's providing a lot of poker commentary during some of the poker related things later on. That was kind of where I started flipping through. I was like, I don't know, time for all these fucking words. Like, they try to explain mahjong to me, and it's just not happening. I don't know what to tell you. It's impenetrable to me.
And honestly, all the fanservice stuff that happens wouldn't frustrate me as much if the women got to do anything else.
Oh, they don't.
At that point. So you've got Yuka, who is an ace magician, Rio, who is an ace billiards player. You've got Mika, who is this heiress to, a rich family and is a tennis pro as well. You've got Mayo, who has this weird horticultural expertise. She's like poison ivy. Emily, who can do anything, seemingly, just by wanting to. She is an ace at everything from the very beginning. She almost beats tennis ace Mika in her first ever tennis match because she's just broken in every way, essentially. And none of them get to do anything except be held hostage and get naked. It's so annoying.
There's a very, very funny moment. I'm going to say an insane sentence to people who aren't reading this series. So there's a moment when Barack Obama is facing off against the bad guy of the series.
King Omaha.
We can't talk about him now. I need to finish this point. Where Emily Rose shows up, because, like, this is a big bet, and this is the president of the United States who's doing it, and he's, like, going to potentially die during this. So she's like, I have to stop this. Emily Rose shows up to be like, you cannot do this, Mr. President. This is a woman, by the way, who has a magic eyeball. She loses the power at some point. I forget when, but she did have an eyeball power that let her mind control people. And basically shows up to be like, you cannot do this, Mr. President. He's like, I'm going to. And then the other guy rips her top off, and she spends the rest of the match silently holding her boobs, basically, and being like, Mr. President. It's almost funny how backwards and shitty it is. Like, she couldn't even do anything by showing up. She just involves herself into an arc where, from henceforward, she will just be a damsel in distress the entire time.
I want to talk a bit about the tournament itself, because I actually kind of like gave like notes to myself what the contests that Tomu was involved in are, and this column right here is like my star ratings, and you can tell that they get thinner later on. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but you can tell at least it gets thinner towards the end of the series. So like my favorite is the Magic Blackjack one between Yuka and Tomu. That it peaked early. That was like chapter 6. My other favorite one was the Boiling Cauldrons one, which was basically like Magic Yahtzee. And then there's some nice ones that are like the dice stacking one is fun. The billiards one is fun. The best one in the tournament is the roulette thing that Tomu does at the beginning. That set actually a nice bar. It's they bet on this giant roulette table, and it looks like it's luck, but it turns out it's not. There are keys in which you can actually control where the marble falls, and there's high stakes because under each of the zeros on the roulette table, there is someone that is important to one of the players, so it gives them a devastating consequence because the giant marble will crush them. It turns out that the opponent that Tomu has in that game is the person who ripped off Ryo's family and ruined her life and killed her father. She's not involved in it at all.
That's such a wild thing. They throw that out like midway through. They're like, hey, that's the guy who ripped off my dad and ruined his whole family. And you're like, oh, so Ryo's going to get involved in this match then, right? Well, surely after the match is done, when all the consequences have kind of started to been handed out, she will be involved in bringing karmatic justice to this character.
She'll do a trick shot that will cause a billiard ball to go under his foot and he'll trip and fall over. No, she cries. Mika holds her.
She cries as her friend solves the problem for her. That's where I was like, these two are gay. You won't be able to convince me otherwise. These two are girlfriends. That's the only way this makes sense, because otherwise it's egregious. She was right there. Her dad's, the man who basically killed her father, was right there, and she just doesn't get involved. It's an insane thing.
Then we have the orgasm fish contest.
Okay, now
I feel it is so unfortunate that this is the orgasm fish contest, because if you remove that entirely, it's actually really cool. I feel like
it's a very strange match, because at some point we've just been told many times like that Tomu needs like friends, like there's bodies to fill a number of seats, that members of his group will kind of come in to fill that group, and they're told like it's an 8-person tournament. So I was like, oh, a couple of his friends will like round it out, and they were like, no, it's all new people basically. It's
well, Mika, his rival through the series, will be involved. Yes,
she will be a ring announcer / dealer. Yeah. So we're gonna put new characters in there, and you're kind of sitting there and you're like, why am I being introduced to these two Portuguese twins, or Brazilian twins? Like, why is this relevant? Who are these people? Why is this Yakuza guy being introduced to me? It doesn't matter until it matters that we have 3 female characters who can be involved in a match. But the gimmick of the match is that they're like rolling dice to essentially like determine a number, and like
it's dice blackjack essentially.
Yes. And if they lose a number of fish will be inserted into the tank that they're in, and the fish are special fish that if they bite you, it gives you like like an aggressively intensive orgasm experience. And it's to the point. Now, granted, I do not believe this series is officially licensed anywhere. We are reading some of the scalations of it. These characters do scream "I'm coming" several times during this arc.
Even if they weren't, there are definitely some poses that are definitely first modeled from certain works. Let's put it that way.
One woman like quivers and grabs her lip, but she does it from like underneath her breasts. Like she like pushes her her hand squeezes from up underneath them up to do it. And
I'll have to check that one.
I'm mostly just like, why is this a thing for so? Like that's just like a seemingly a very difficult way to do that expression, but it's such a ridiculous thing. The whole gimmick of the Brazilian girls is that they are from like a small hometown and they're blessed with the god of the luck god. So basically they just continuously get extremely lucky rolls, and it's to the point where it's like it feels like it's magic. But the end turnabout to it is like it's not. It's not magic. It's just a placebo effect that these girls feel. Because there's a lot of weird misdirects. There's one point where they even insinuate that these grown women who have been being bitten by these fish over and over again might actually be children who have aged up or something like that. And you're like, I'm going to ignore that part. And then thankfully they say the whole thing's kind of bullshit, which is like, okay, cool. These girls are just insane. But they lose this match. And they start to wither and age because they were told they could get this luck, but that it would kill them. And they feel that now that they've lost, they are withering away. They like quite visibly start to age into like mummified husks. And then King Omaha, aka Barack Obama,
aka Jesus,
shows up with an American flag. He drapes it around them. He says, "Change!" And these poor girls are so in love with America, they start to just get hot again.
Remember when everyone just like thought that Barack Obama was a superhero? What a weird time that was.
Yeah, I was like, you can tell exactly when this series came out. You're like, yeah, this is about when Barack Obama must have gotten elected. It's insane.
Yeah. Then after that, there's the really stupid match between the characters nobody cares about. And I called what the number was going to be after like 3 guesses when they had 12. And then they get past that, and it's the match between Abidani, who is the villain of the series, and King Omaha, aka Barack Obama Jesus, who is fighting for America. And they are playing...
Don't forget, his vice president, Baden, is there, along with his Secretary of State,
Haley or something
Haley,
like that.
I think it was, yeah.
So, Barack Obama, King Omaha, and Abidani have this match where they're playing poker, but when they win a poker hand, their opponent has to play Russian roulette. And as they're doing this, they like can also, depending on how high the hand is, a number of bullets get put in the chamber. And so it can go up to 10 bullets in this specially designed revolver. And they have to play Russian roulette with it. If at that point. During all of this, Mushroom has been called down from the stands to act as a special dealer.
God, I forgot that was this match.
Because they have a special deck that they're using. They run through the cards only once in the deck. They don't shuffle it between hands. So all the cards are laid out on a table. And that table's name is Mika, who is naked and has the cards clinging to her body. And the explanation is, well, you see, because they're playing Russian roulette, and so because somebody could die in this match, we need to have a neutral judge who will keep things going no matter what. And so because Mushroom is so dedicated to stripping this girl, he's going to keep on dealing the cards no matter how dangerous it is. He will see it through to the end. He's the only one who can be trusted with this.
He cares more about seeing some cooch than he does about people's lives. He was just like, I'm so sorry that man is dead. But I did get to see some side boob, and I'm pretty ecstatic about that.
The way that he talks to Mika in that match is so
it's
creepy.
Gross. It's extremely gross. She wakes up. She's essentially paralyzed from the orgasm fish earlier. And she's supposed to be unconscious while this happens, which is not better. But she wakes up for a moment, and Mushroom immediately makes up a lie. He's like, "You're just dreaming," because that's how crazy this is. It'd be so insane for us to be stripping you nude while you were unable to move in front of an audience. This has to be a dream. And she's like, "I guess it must be a dream." And that's just how it is. No one has told her the reality that that game was real, because she should kill the shit out of Mushroom Head afterwards. She should have ripped his fucking head off.
Everyone should be stopping this boy in the groin constantly for some of the stuff that he does at the end of the series.
It's also weird because the cards cling to Mika's body like fucking cellophane. Like they
so every time he takes a card off, she goes, ah!
Yeah. And like weird. They stick to her in a way, because otherwise they're like, actually a naked human body, especially like a female body, is like extraordinarily bad place to put a bunch of playing cards on, because you'd have a bunch of cards that would be like obviously half flipped up. Like you'd be seeing cards left and right. But no, these ones are like fucking decals that are stuck to her body until they flip it over.
So in summary, this match that is going on between a demon and the President of the United States, who is trying to defeat Abidanni in order to gain access to a special mathematical code that only he knows, so that he could use it for the good and benefit of America and therefore the world, and where their lives are on the line because they might shoot their own brains out. During all of that, there is just as much focus being put on Mushroom's quest to strip Mika naked, and how much discipline he has that he is keeping her naughtiest bits for last, because that is his way of stripping. He has the discipline to see it through to the end.
Someone found this really funny. I don't know if it's the artist. I don't know if it's the author. One of them finds this extremely hysterical, and I don't. And you know what? It's fine. I'm like able to humorously go with some of the fan service in this series. Like very early on, there's a scene where Yuka goes to Abidanni and does like a little show for him, and he like accuses her of cheating, so she strips off all of her clothes, gets completely naked. She's like, "See, I'm not hiding anything on my body. This is just pure skill." And you're like, I understand this was just an excuse to get her completely naked, but it also is like kind of a move. Like it's just kind of like a badass move of just like, fuck you, I don't care. Like I have a lot of pride in my skill. Later on, it is just purely like this look. I'd be like, I'm gonna take all of your clothes off, and you're like, this sucks. This guy used to be kind of cute and adorable in his stupid ways. Now I hate him.
And as much as I dislike that, it's not as bad as the stuff that comes afterwards. Because the Mahjong match where all the girls are held hostage and they have to literally get naked, well, down to their underwear, in order to survive being dropped on spiky pits. And so all the guys in the audience are gawking at them again. They're playing Mahjong during that. And I don't know the rules of Mahjong, Quinn, so I didn't know what was happening.
Imagine,
and it went on for so long!
Imagine how confusing it must have been to be one of those dudes in the audience who's like, struggling with like being turned on, I guess, and then also being like, oh, but those girls might be dropped into those spikes in a second. Like, what the fuck kind of mentality are you sitting in for all of that? It goes on forever. Mahjong makes no sense to me. It ended in a way where I was like, oh, did Tomo lose? And they were like, I guess kind of, but he didn't, or something. I don't know. He's still playing. And I was like, all right, I guess that's the end of that. And then they were like, the next match will also kind of be Mahjong. And I was like, nope, I'm just going to start clicking through this one. I have no patience.
Quinn, I just remembered we haven't even talked about my least favorite character in this series.
Is it the horny old man guy?
Yeah. They go when they arrive in Macau to go and see a guy who used to like work with Tomu's father, and he's trying to convince Tomu to like back out of this and not get involved. But you have to understand two things. One, he's a Chinese stereotype. He is an even worse Chinese stereotype than Ba Sensei or Sifu Ba from Kenichi.
Yes.
Like that guy. He's even worse than him. I have never seen a more uncomfortable racial stereotype in the entire time that we've been reading manga. The buck teeth, the crisscrossing eyes, the fact that most of his personality is being a perverted asshole, and the other part is just being a neglectful asshole who abandoned his own daughter. Those are his personality traits. And then right at the last minute, they try and make you sympathize with him. And I'm like, no, this guy's worse than the actual villain of this story. Then they spend so much time on that they have to do 2 more matches that last collectively as long as the really boring mahjong match. And it gets to the point where they have the big dramatic showdown finally between Abidani and Tomu, and it's just basic fucking poker. It's not even poker, it's blackjack. Blackjack with less of a twist than the other times that they've played blackjack.
It's like blackjack with whammy cards, basically. That's the only thing that's added to it. And it's an extremely boring thing. Well, part of the thing, too, is they start adding, like... Because, like, they start kind of, like, trying to almost do... I think this came later, but sort of like Alice in Borderland, where, like, all the games kind of have secret twists in them to make them very survivable when you think about it. So... The situation with all the girls, like, it was solved. If they all just took off their clothes and tied it around the barbed wire cables by them, they could easily prop themselves up in their underwear comfortably for the whole time. And it seems like it should have been cool, but the Russian roulette one, because it's 10 bullets to a chamber, the bullets have to be smaller. So a way to survive is to, instead of aiming for your head like this, you aim for your head like this, and you just, like, thread the gap with the bullet, essentially, to try to, like, avoid hitting a vital spot because the bullet's smaller. And they're like, that's the gimmick, guys. Don't worry about it. So, like, this one, they're like, the match can keep going if you survive. So Tomu gets, like, a bullshit, like, this medallion will help conduct... give you like a poison to stop your heart.
Because they're in electric chairs, and so if they go bust, then they get electrocuted.
Yes.
And so Tomu does, but he survives.
It's all very silly nonsense, but it is like, oh, is that all we're kind of doing at the end? And it was weird, because I felt like we were escalating a little bit. Like, the mountain game's weird, but, like, you do kind of get where the gambling aspect plays in there. But eventually they just reach a point where they're just like, here are like 4 casino games in a row. Each like kind of slightly deadly. And that's it. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, this wasn't really like a grand way to end the series or anything.
It gets less imaginative. It gets less interesting. And it just generally gets worse over that entire like second half of the series, basically. So I start off thinking that this series was kind of okay. Ended up walking away from it very disappointed and not liking it and being very resentful that, again, any character that I had any attachment to was neglected and ruined. So, yay.
I read this series at some point in time, so I enjoyed a certain aspect to it. I remembered exactly where I stopped as I got through the mountain arc, and I got to, like, a panel where, like, Yuka gets, like, tied up, stripped, and, like, gagged in the woods, and I just remember seeing that scene being like, that's just gonna be what happens to these characters from now on, isn't it? Like, that's just, like, as I passed by it again, I was like, that's what this is like from now on. And it is, unfortunately, and that's the very unfortunate part of it. Like, I think this would be, like, a kitschy, weird 2000s anime that or manga that you'd love to be able to like quote to people to be like, you got to see this thing. Barack Obama shows up in it, and he's betting the U.S. debt in a match where if he loses, a new face gets added to Mount Rushmore, and it's of this big vampire man whose brain exploded when he mathed too hard. And you're like, yeah, it's very silly, but there's so much stripping and like nudity and just like weirdness to the series that I'm like, unless I knew the person was specifically into that, I was like, I couldn't in good conscience recommend it, because that's way too much of like a major component of this series. So
yeah, I think that about covers it. God, I took so many notes on characters that annoyed me too. The whole thing where it turns out Jasmine's got a secret evil personality which fucks Abidani. Like, I didn't even talk about that. No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. None of these things matter, unfortunately. Like, I would love to. The saddest thing is Mio, who has the situation where she shows back up in Macau, because she's the one girl who like gets to escape. she's gone for a bit, and then she shows back up, and you're like, oh, it's Mio again.
She's making her way in the billiards world now.
And
yeah.
and then there's just a sequence in the series where she's like, I just wanted to come here to play billiards. And you're like, oh my god, yes, I feel really bad. You're not interested in this world at all. And it just keeps being thrust upon you. It's actually very tragic.
Yeah. God, what could have been, like the idea of this series in my brain in its ideal form is to exemplify different ways that different skills can be used in gambling. The fact that you're set up with these people with these very immense skills, like even Rio, who is someone who is incredibly honest and doesn't gamble, but she has a skill that can't be cheated. It really frustrates me that there's not more imagination to incorporate that in the series. And I wish that I just wish that there was something completely different that happens in the entire second half.
Nick,
of manga.
let's make our own manga where the character
with blackjack and weight. No, hang on.
And weight and gravitas, a little kino for the audience.
All right, we do have a lot of manga to cover beyond that, so we're gonna get into Ichi the Witch, 21st Hunt, How We Live. Last time we were told about a special prophecy that was told that Ichi could save the world by acquiring the World Hater magic, but it would kill him. And we actually get to see that being given down by our little prophecy magic girl here. And Monogold being really disappointed, like, no, hold on a second. You told us about the Aurora magic and how he could, also acquire the World Hair magic. And she says, this is an addendum to that. Yeah. This just came to me yesterday. But, no big deal. One human will give up their life and that's it, right? So no need to change the plan. And Monogold's not amused by this. Pounds her desk, looks really, really angry. Actually, probably the angriest we've seen a character be in this series so far.
How did you feel about this?
In terms of what?
So this was an interesting moment to me because I'm so used to like organizations at the top usually, because there's always the idea that like power corrupts once you reach a certain level. Like being at the top, you'd be like, for the good of the world, we should be willing to. But this is like somebody is like a Superman who's made it to the very top, who's just like, I refuse to let one life go. And I was like, this is refreshingly different. But also I wonder what this does to like, how do you create antagonists for this sort of series if they're not within this organization in any way, shape, or form? So like, I think that's the part I'm very curious on.
And it does seem like we're going more to the way that the people in the Witches' Council all want to do the right thing, but have different thoughts and opinions on how you do that, which is kind of a more idealized way of things than even the real world works. So Monogold, I do like that she immediately says, because she's there with Shirabadona and Descares, and she says, okay, outside of us, nobody knows about this except Ichi. He should be informed as soon as he wakes up. So she decrees at this point, is like, we're not going to keep Ichi in the dark about this, but we're also not going to tell the entire world about it, which is a very, I would say, good way of doing it. And there is a transition from there to the present, as Descares is by herself at a bar, and the bar is automated with magic mirrors, which is neat. But as she's sitting by herself, Togeis comes up, and she points out, like, hey, you're drinking a whole lot, aren't you? And Descares starts, like, trading barbs with her, and Togeis says, like, are you drunk already? And Descares says, alcohol's for getting drunk, and that's why you're here, right? So, touche. Togeis is annoyed because, hey, the mushroom magic that she acquired has been very kind to all the other magic she's acquired in her magic circle.
I love that.
Just giving them all mushrooms.
Yeah, the thing that makes her upset is not that the mushroom has a bad personality. It's that she has collected, up to this point, nothing but, like, these very elegant, like, this ice and, like, sparkling wind. Like, it seems like all of her, like, stuff is, like, meant to fit thematically to some degree. And now she's got this little mushroom guy just being like, hey, I got a little treat for you. It's like the thing. And she's upset like it's a personal offense. Like, she's not just, like, annoyed. She's like, this son of a bitch. Like, she's screaming and pounding her drink into the table.
How dare he be nice?
I'll take him, Joke Ice. If you don't want him, I would love to go into my fucking mind palace and hang out with a little mushroom guy. He's got little snacks for you at all times.
All the time. He's just like, here, have some mushroom snacks. Here
I
you
got
go.
a truffle. Here you go. Like, I love this guy.
Toge Ice is also annoyed because she says that she wanted to acquire the Hisame magic, but of course Ichi and Descartes waltzed in and stole it. Descartes is very unapologetic about this. Nice to see her more back to her own ways. She says, you snooze, you lose.
I just love
because they're
her.
children.
Her head is tilted the whole time, so it really kind of sounds like she just threw that out to say, you snooze, you lose. Like, fuck you.
But Descartes says, well, you did win the bet, and Toge immediately says, no, stop. You know what we both saw happened. And she says, I'm not going to insist on pushing my opinion now after all of that. I'd heard from the Oracle about his connection to the World Hater, but I certainly didn't expect that we'd encounter that magic this soon. Surely he was born under a special star, and that is why I'm concerned about you. And she says to Descartes, I worry the more you spend time near him, the more he's going to come to remind you of Libro. And we get a flashback of Descartes thinking on her brother, Libro, who definitely bears a resemblance to Ichi, but is also very clearly Descartes' brother. And, you know, being told, like, hey, stop reading my magic books, you know, that you can't get anything out of it, of course, because he's a guy. And she thinks, like, oh, my baby brother's so dumb. And then while she's thinking of his, you know, cheeky, grinning face, bamf, he gets warped, and his entire face just melts, essentially. And so...
Yeah.
Yay!
And then it cuts to Descartes pouring a drink.
More. The guy says, I know you want to stop the World Hair magic more than anyone, but you're a kind person. Much too kind. So if being around him gets to be too hard, and she finishes her drink and smacks it on the table, then I'll swap places with you anytime. Des. And she calls Descartes by a little nickname.
These two are so gay. They have little nicknames for each other. Like,
friends,
yeah,
sisters.
We're gonna do like a full page
cohorts.
We're gonna get a full page spread where they just keep these two fingers filed, and they're just like posing like that, and everyone's just gonna be like, they're just good friends. Look at these roomies.
Associates, co-workers. They can't think of any
mouth
more.
buddies.
Not gay. And Descartes has her own little nickname for Toge Ice, which is Chick, which I'm not exactly sure how that fits, but whatever. She pours herself some more alcohol, finishes it, smacks it down again, goes to talk to Ichi. Ichi, who's still recovering, and Kamugi has recovered from her nap. They're playing what looks like Old Maid together, and apparently Ichi is destroying her at it. She's very upset.
Yeah.
Descartes waves Ichi over for a private conversation. They sit down, basically like for a picnic, but like indoors. And she says, come on, eat something. And Ichi is suspicious, and he's like, are you sharing food? Are you too sick to eat? And Descartes is like, eat! Shut up! And she says to him, like, hey, so all that stuff with the prophecy, you know, the world hater magic, you're gonna die if you save the world and all that. Are you like okay with that? And Ichi says, like, yeah, I don't mind. And Descartes says, like, well, what are you not afraid of dying? And he says, well, I don't want to die. I'm only alive now because before, I refused to die. He flashes back to when he killed the wolf when he was abandoned in the woods. But he says, look, I just can't really wrap my mind around the idea of the future. For a long time, I just hunted, just trying to survive for that day. And no matter how hard I think, it's all I can do to hunt and live for today. That is the only way I know how to live. And trying to plan for the future makes my brain hurt. But I like hunting magics. I want to keep on trying to fight the prophecy and all that stuff. And he seems like he's really getting ramped up to say something and, just kind of like state like his character and all that. And Descaros cuts him off and says, Ichi, I want you to be my family. Big 2-page spread as they're sitting across from each other. She gets just very seriously says it. And he is shocked.
Yeah. I guess we'll see where this is going next week. This has been like such a whirlwind for Descaros, who like the first volume of this series was just kind of like a shitpost character. And you just kind of like, yeah, it's, this rules, whatever, all that sort of stuff. And now she's like very badass. She's got a complicated relationship with a rival. She's got like an emotional backstory and now has this very like serious moment with Ichi. It's very like an intriguing like 2 volumes for Descaros, like volume, honestly, for Descaros. So, super excited for it. Like it's very cool. It's just like, it keeps throwing me off guard. Like earlier in the chapter when she's just kind of being a bitch to Togais, I'm like, yeah, this is my girl. This story is. And then after the end of the chapter, she's like, I need to speak with you about love. And you're like, oh, like this is a powerful step for this character.
Yeah, I should clarify. She doesn't say, I want you to be my family. She says, I want you, ... be my family. Which can have a different connotation to that. And I am curious exactly what that connotation is. Like, what is the exact context of what she's talking about here? Because it can mean various things. She could be talking about some sort of weird witch thing, like a coven or whatever. She could be literally saying, like, Ichi, be my surrogate little brother. Or it could be, like, not necessarily a romantic thing, but like a marriage type of thing.
Yes.
So I'm curious to see where that goes.
I am assuming this is a sentiment for it could just be a typo. That's also a problem, a possibility. It could also, I think the way I'm choosing to read this is I want you to be a part of my family because I feel like the only reason why you don't seem to care about this prophecy ending with you dying is because you don't have anything in this world to hold on to. And I don't like that. I don't like how easily you're agreeing to just die. So I am trying to give you a reason to care about living in this world.
She's being a good mentor.
Yeah, that's at least my reading. So I could be wrong. Maybe it is something else, though.
Well, something I know you weren't wrong about, Quinn. If we move on to Blue Box,
oh yeah,
183. This girl right here specifically said, you know what? That last basket that Chinatsu's making, I'll bet it's not even the deciding one. And you were fucking right.
I was pretty proud about that one. I didn't really get a lot of dabs for it in the Discord that I saw, and I should have. There should have been a small parade. Like,
I'm giving them to you right now.
Look. Fuck Philadelphia, okay? Now that the Super Bowl's over, Philadelphia Eagles suck. Whatever, who cares? I wanted our audience to be destroying, light poles. I just won the Super Bowl, essentially. So, that's anything short of that was a disappointment to me, but I appreciate you giving me a dabs.
Chapter 183 is Let's Play Basketball. Cute little cover page with Yumika and Chinatsu with their younger selves together. And that last second basket that Chinatsu was shooting at the buzzer, it went in. They won 74-69. The most of the basket can score is 3 points, meaning that they were already winning by at least 2, and it didn't matter that she was making that shot. But what does matter is that Chinatsu's team have won the qualifying tournament. They get to go to nationals. Hooray! And we get celebration from her cheering section. Ayame and Karen are crying, and even her dad's tearing up a little bit. He's very, very proud of his daughter. Both the teams bow to each other.
And Kyo's there, Nick. Kyo's
there. and a girl that looks a lot like Chinatsu.
Yeah, well, that's for the doppelganger arc we may or may not get to. If the series runs long enough, they're like, guys, it's sort of like a secret invasion thing's going on. Do you remember that girl who looked a lot like Chinatsu in the audience? Well, the clues have been seeded for a while.
Oh no, everyone has realistic designs in this series. We'll have a really hard time telling. Yumika's teammates come over to her and thank her for getting them this far in the tournament, and they say, we're glad that we got to play basketball with you. And Yumika says, hey, I should be saying thanks because everyone on the team, really worked hard. You guys worked so hard for the past 3 years. And she walks off after that by herself, sits down on a bench, and she just starts crying. And she thinks to herself, look, I don't have the right to cry the way that everybody else does because I took 2 years off basketball. I don't deserve to mourn the same way as my teammates who practice for this every single day. And she thinks to herself, why did I quit? Why couldn't I have just kept on going on just the good memories? And yeah,
we knew we had to do this. We knew that this match was going to end with one of these poor girls having their heart absolutely broken. This is like that band-aid you just have to rip off. You're just like, yep, get all your thoughts out, Yumika, because you lost, but you did a great job, and I hope that you come away with a good feeling about this. And thankfully, you turned the page, and it does get to go up quite a bit. But you knew you had to go through some heartbreak first.
It's definitely bringing up reminders of like those early life like regrets where you feel like, oh, this is the worst thing that I've ever done because I don't have the life experience to provide the context that I really shouldn't feel that guilty for living my life in a way that suited my needs as a teenager at the time.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that bad that you took 2 years off basketball, but I also understand why you feel that way. It's like you've did the worst thing you could have possibly done. It's like, it's not that bad, but I understand why you think that way. She wallows in her own frustration for a minute. Chinatsu finds her, sits down next to her. And when Yumika realizes that she's come by, she chuckles and she's like, man, you just had to see me at my worst. And Chinatsu says, nah, I just got to see you doing something that is, very you. And Yumika's like, you're the crybaby.
Fuck you, I'm not a crybaby, you are.
And Chinatsu's like, that's not what I mean. I mean, you act fine when you're in front of other people, but you're like this when you're alone. You can cry in frustration so much that your voice goes all weird. That is Yumika Goto.
She only knows that because they're such good friends. She's seen that before.
And she advises Yumika, it's better not to cry on your own. It's something you should share. And I'm saying this as your former teammate, so it's not wrong of me to do that. And Yumika reflects on, all the feelings that she's had, in her high school life, and how she lost those feelings. They came back really strong. She regretted losing those feelings. And then she says, no. She gets it from the bench. She's calmed down. She looks at Chinatsu and says, hey, Natsu, let's play basketball tomorrow.
Cutest fucking moment. God bless this series, and that in the same chapter it'll break your heart, it'll heal it. Like, that says a lot.
So she heads off. Chinatsu gets to reunite with her cheering section. Ayame and Karen are saying something very weird, which is all of America wept. I don't really know what the context of that is, but I love Kyo's comment of, this is Japan. It's not America at all. When Chinatsu catches up with them, Ayame and Karen rush in and hug her, and they're like, you're so cool, I want your autograph and stuff. Chinatsu sees her dad. She laughs a little bit, and he says, like, why do you look kind of nervous? And she's like, I'm not nervous. She says, I could hear you cheering. Thank you. And he says, you worked really hard. Congratulations on winning. And Chinatsu says, it looks like I had the wrong impression of you because of the realizations they had about each other during this visit. But her father looks at her, looks over at Taiki, looks back to her and says, no, I had the wrong impression. And he says, until the Winter Cup's over, let's see about you living with the Inamatas, since it's for your basketball. Aww.
Very sweet.
And Taika just says, hey, congrats on going to the Winter Cup. He doesn't need to have a big emotional thing with her.
we know he's going to get a moment with her a little bit later, yeah.
Yeah. And she says, it's all thanks to you. And he's like, I didn't do anything. But Chinatsu says, I've got a lot to thank you for. But the number one thing, thank you for coming to morning practice every day.
It's weird, because there's almost a feeling that, like, if we got, like, they were like, hey guys, there's a skeet that came out today that said this is actually the last chapter of Blue Box, I'd be like, oh my god, this does seem like it could be the last chapter of the series. That, like, it feels like a very conclusive thought to a lot of the sentiments.
Yes. This, I mean, obviously there's way too much, like, in terms of all the side plots and everything, and Blue Box is way too successful to just abandon them. But it feels like this could actually be a satisfactory conclusion to things, because Chinatsu's, achieved her goal and things are good for her. It feels like a nice final note for her. But that's kind of one of the things about, this time in your life is you experience a lot of conclusions and then just keep on going.
Yep. You just keep on moving forward. And I appreciate this because, one, this is like a very good way to wrap up a couple things. It gives us this very cute moment between Yumika and Chinatsu, and I really appreciate that. But also this lets me know that, like, okay, we've spent a lot of time with these two for a little bit now. That's usually when we get like an arc about Ayame and Kyo or something like that. Like, I feel like we're about to like pivot now to one of the other relationships in this series. Maybe this time it'll end up being Hina's relationship with Yusei? Haruto. Knew it was something with an H. Because we haven't focused on that one a little bit, but yeah, I know. We shall see.
I do look forward to seeing some of that, because that's kind of where the juicy stuff is happening in all the teenage drama right now. But this was very nice, and it was nice to see just a happy ending for everybody involved. I mean, not Yumika, but it was nice. It was still nice.
Speaking of happy endings, Nick, Chainsaw Man, chapter 193, Burning Kiss. I gotta give me some. I
fumbled that one. You just scooped that one up and ran it in. I just. Oof.
We're a team, Nick. We work together. That's the important thing. Nick, what's your doing in this opening couple pages? Because we can only see her face.
She's bumping and grinding, baby. So she's in Denji's lap, and I'm very glad for the angle that we get for a lot of this, which is just on their faces. And I also like the orientation of the panels, so it's like the opposite of what it actually is. But anyway, Yoru just, she decides to like bully flirt Denji, basically.
She realizes she has this man as putty in her hands, and she's just kind of showing it off.
Yeah. And she points out, like, your whole family's been killed, but you're completely just, like, obsessed with sex and everything. And even though I'm going to turn you into a weapon, I'm the only one who's nice to you, so you're still really drawn to me. And she gives him a little against the neck, and she says, I like that pitiful look of yours. And it's like, honey, you don't have the right to pretend that you're this in control of the situation. It's only because Denji is so much worse than you that you can do this. But you don't know what you're doing either.
Yeah, you want to be upset, but you're like, she's fucking right. She really does have this poor boy just eating out of the palm of her hand right now, but shouldn't. That's the thing.
So she says, and honestly, the one sentence that I feel like sums up her entire weird relationship with Denji, I want you to be even more pitiful, which makes me feel sorry for you, so part of me wants to cheer you up. Yeah, that about sums up.
There's a weird affection in my doming you. And I don't quite understand it, but I'm going to utilize it as I wish.
So, Nana Tokaru sequel series Chainsaw Man Chapter 193 continues with Denji asking Yoru to please grind on me some more. And she says, no. Why? And she says, because you're more pitiful if I don't. And so Denji asks her straight up, do you hate me? And she says, Blasa likes you. And Denji replies with, what? Which is about, yeah. And Yoru flat out says, since we share a brain, I like you too. And he's like, well, you like me? Yeah, lucky you. And Denji starts to tear up a little, which seems to shock Yoru at first and gets her attention. And then she says, hey, let me cry if you're gonna let me watch if you're gonna cry.
I loved how fucking just evil that is, where she's like, hey, you better let me know when you're going to cry. I want to watch you at your most writhing and pathetic.
So
please
Denji
don't bully me, fucking Yoru-chan or whatever the fuck.
Yoru-chan. God. Denji gets really emotionally, says, I'm just glad that there's somebody who likes me. And it's like, oh yeah, all the people who cared about you were dead. That sucks, dude. So he's really crying now. Yoru gets aroused, I guess, and says, you poor thing, pivots around and starts to get up on that mouth. And I don't know if she knows what she's doing or not while she's kissing him like this. It seems very like teenage kissy to me. But when they part, she says, are you dead set on having sex? And he, like a bobblehead, starts nodding. So she says, okay, if you defeat the Death Devil, I'll have sex with you. But if you fail, I'll turn you into a weapon and beat her myself. So there you go, Yoru. You've definitely got it. You've definitely got a plan, and things are definitely going to go your way from here on out. Definitely.
I feel bad for poor Asa, who's watching all this happening to some degree of consciousness, I assume. It's got to be killing her right now. And I just feel bad for her that she doesn't get a voice in this situation. Like, I'm really hoping she gets to show up soon. But also, now I kind of want the Death Devil to show up and Denji just to, like, show up like a fucking cartoon and chomp her. Like, just swallow her. And then he's like, sex! One sex, please!
It's a good plan, I'll admit. You know, like, you got your advantages, you might as well use them. But, it feels like we've kind of, I don't know. This is a little bit not weird in terms of like she's done this, but the timing of when she's doing it to me.
This is a very frequent thing that Denji gets controlled by his sexuality, and it's an aspect of his character that like evolves but never changes. It just becomes like a new way that he processes the fact that he has this extremely obvious weakness that people keep exploiting.
Yes. Well, you know, hot girls keep exploiting, but yes.
Yes. That's half past these series, though.
No, it's true. I think you're not wrong. All right, Astro Royale, Chapter 40, Path of Carnage. I killed Dad. What? I thought he was sick. Are you sure? All right, let's go and watch the match instead. All right.
What a fucking exchange. My dude's just sitting up at the fucking, he's like, I'm just taking a piss. It's a European time. And he's probably doing it as hard as he can because that's what a man would do or something like that. And this dude just walks up and he's like, hey, wouldn't it be fucking weird if I killed Dad? And he's like, well, did Dad die of cancer? All right, well, see you out there.
Did he?
And then he just kind of walks away and you're like, did you wash your hands? Like what was this?
All right. So then we're getting another match. It's Taira, who we saw at the beginning of the tournament, and he is going up against Samidare, who is a weird Toby looking guy. Toby from Naruto, he kind of looks like that with like weird like camouflage stuff on him. And so everyone's like, well, who the heck is that? But immediately Tyra goes, you're Satsuki. Just immediately spoils it. There's no tension at all. There's no cliffhanger of the reveal or anything.
We don't even get to see this thing fight. Like
no. So Tyra says, you're Satsuki, the left-hand man of Shio. And so Satsuki's doll, it turns out, says, you're quite clever. There's a lot of speculation around this tournament, but what are you here for? You lured the Yotsurugis here with the Daybreak Ore, but why? So Tyra attacks with his quote-unquote vortex whip, which he pulls out of his own palm and breaks the doll thing's hand. And he says, I'm going to massacre the entire Yotsurugi family on behalf of the Japanese Yakuza Association. And then he chops off the doll's head. And everyone's like, oh my god, he chopped off its head. So it's been killed. Tyra wins.
Is it a whip or a sword?
I don't know. I don't care.
He made a sword, though. Why is it not called Vortex Sword?
I don't know. Look, whips are very edge-like, Quinn, I'll have you know. That bendy, flexible leather, very blade-like. I mean, they do leave cuts immediately.
Yeah, look, whip's very powerful. I would not be shocked if you cut a person's head off with a whip. It's just very clearly a sword he's wielding later, so it just confuses me.
It does seem to retain its shape in a way that a whip does not.
It's very clearly a katana in multiple shots after this, so I'm just like, is this a sword he just also had on him? What does his... Look, Nick, I'm just asking for a battle manga that has characters who have special powers that are extraordinarily specific to their personality and their like emotional feelings to be evocative in some way, to tell me something about who they are as a character. And all I know is this power is called Vortex Whip, and it makes a sword. And should I process that? Does that say something about who this dude is as a character, or does it just suck?
I feel like most BDSM practitioners would look at this and say, like, nah, that doesn't meet regulations for a whip. A whip has to be at least twice that length. That might possibly qualify as a riding crop, but not a whip.
Any port in a storm, Nick. All right, so he cuts off the head. It's very successful. Everyone's like, you did it. You killed that dude. that rules.
The head keeps talking and says, you've changed, Tyra, which would be great if we had any context for that, but we've only known Tyra for like 2 chapters in appearances before this. Whatever. Lame-o guy who's there to save his sister is like, oh, the head talk! You've got to be... Stop being surprised by everything. Just stop. Stop being surprised by everything. Anyway... The head proclaims, what's made you so cruel? And Tyra says, you don't want to dirty your own hands fighting. What an appropriate Astro for you. And it turns out Satsuki is sitting in the audience, very obviously with a giant eyeball over his head, which seems to be the thing controlling his doll thing. So Tyra dashes out into the crowd in order to strike him with his, well, it's a katana, and... Satsuki uses his Puppet King ability to get some more people in the audience to get in the way, and so Tyra stops attacking, and he says, weak humans who are nothing more than puppets, I'll snap them in two like the wooden puppets they are. But then Hibaro intervenes, he grabs the sword, and he says, don't bring ordinary civilians into a fight between Yakuza. And Tyra says, because I guess he, just had this in the holster to bring out, I walk the path of carnage, the complete opposite of the noble path you and our forefathers follow. All right. Do you have any other pre-programmed lines to say to Hibaro for every interaction you have? Because that contextually had nothing to do with what he just told you to do.
No, Nick, it's completely different. He's like, look, you're like noble, but I'm like dark and edgy and like kind of a corruption of your beliefs. But like, what if these two were almost like friends, like almost like mirrors, to one another? That'd be crazy. So
there's a flashback we get to when they were practicing martial arts and they were fighting, and Shikaba was there too, Quinn. Good to know. And so their father comes out and says, you know, Taira and Hibaru are a lot alike. They walk the same path, so they often clash. That's why one day they'll become inseparable friends.
Okay, cool.
Cool. What's for dinner, Dad?
He's
And
like, punches.
Oh, but we had punches yesterday.
And you'll have punches tomorrow if you keep up that attitude.
Hibaru makes Taira lower his katana and says, put that away until the next fight. I'm gonna be the one to crush you. So, what was Satsuki trying to do? Exactly? Whatever. It's over! The chapter's over!
So, when the meteorite showed up, do you think Taira's wish was like, I wish I had a sword, but I could call it a whip? That's my justice. Who knows what the fuck? And he had a lighter. He's like, it turns out the things most people had in their pockets, for a lot of Yakuza guys, a lot of us just had lighters. It's just a common thing. A lot of our things are lighters.
Oh, man. I wish that my katana was a whip. Whips are awesome.
That'd be so cool. Imagine if I had 2 weapons in one. That'd be fucking crazy.
That'd be like being a Power Ranger.
You know, my favorite part of Black Clover is when a character has 2 magics instead of 1. I can't. Nothing's cooler than that. So I think that's what I'm gonna go for. Yeah.
Embers.
Sorry. Tenor Alive has the right one. He wished for a sword and changed his mind to a whip. But the last second, he's like, I wish I had a really cool sword. No, wait, no whip. And he was like, oh, I hope that went through.
Just kind of flooded the request box, and so they got confused with each other.
No, not a sword, a whip.
Embers! Chapter 2, Encounters. Last time, our protagonist, Hitani, decided that he really wanted to play soccer and he wanted to win at it. And so he's gone into high school to join the soccer club, which is a very strong one here at Kosei. But he's run into trouble right away because there is a girl, one of the 2 girls that we saw in the stands in the previous chapter, Hikage, and he is running after her, which of course a lot of people are like, why the hell is that delinquent harassing that girl? It's only because he noticed that she dropped her wallet and he wants to give it back, but he's scared of him. And the other girl that we saw in the stands, who is the club manager, is talking with the captain of the club. Her name is Yukizuki, and the captain sees that, you know, she's being harassed, seemingly to his eyes. So he intervenes, trips up Aitani, and we are introduced to Karu Bugai, the midfielder of the team. And so, you know, Aitani is like, I was just trying to give her back her wallet. And he gets up and the wallet is gone. He has dropped it and it's gone missing. So he is being confronted, is being accused of harassing this girl, and he does not have, you know, the excuse present for it. Yukizuki comes up and says, like, oh, hey, this guy also, like, applied to be a new member of the club. And so Bugai looks at that, looks over at Aitani and says, yeah, we don't need stalker thugs in our club. And he even rips apart the application that Aitani has turned in. Not just because Aitani is seemingly a thug, but also because he points out, you're not bow-legged. I can tell just by looking at your build. You got nice straight legs that you started months ago at most.
We had a brief little hiccup here.
Taking this seriously. You're a rookie. You're just trying to join the club to have fun, and that's it. The quality of the call is diminishing on my side.
Oh, is it? Okay. Just a little Discord hiccup.
And we've seen. It seems like we might be back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think my video is still catching up a second, but
okay. Well, hopefully it does catch up. Anyway, the guy says that Haitani clearly is not taking soccer seriously. He's clearly a rookie at it, so he rejects him on that ground as well. Haitani gets up in his grill, grabs him by the collar, and says, like, look, I don't care who you are. I don't care how good this school is. You're just throwing moldy words around. And so the guy gets really pissed off over that. And so they're going to have a soccer match. And so they gather on the field outside after that. It's going to be one-on-one, similar to how Haitani has had many one-on-one contests with Oshi. And if I lose, sure, you can join the club. Yukizuki is there to observe things, but Hikage has gone missing. The guy gives Haitani the ball first and is like, here, I'll even give you first crack at this. Haitani says, are you trying to diss me? The guy says, yes, I am, which is, I do appreciate the directness. Haitani says, all right, I'm going to make you eat your words, charges in, and is clearly a total amateur at being on offense, which is fun because we didn't see him at all on offense in the first chapter. He can't even dribble the ball, basically, at all. Runs into Bugai, tries to, like, shoulder check him out of the way, and Bugai is like, what, do you think this is rugby? This is nothing. And we are told that one of his strengths is that he has incredible balance. So there's no way that Haitani is going to tackle past him. Haitani is given a full 5 minutes to try and do it. He just keeps getting knocked on his ass. Can't get past him. And the guy does know you're kind of light for your size. And you've gotten all this rashness behind you, but it's not the same as real courage. So he goes to advance to, score and get Haitani out of here. But Haitani now is on defense, which is his strength. We get a big 2-page spread of him immediately swiping the ball away from Guy with this cool sweep of his leg. And Haitani says, like, yeah, this is my style. Why dink the ball around when I can just steal it? Appreciate the usage of dink as a verb. It's silly. And so everyone realizes, like, this guy is actually, like, really good at defense, even though he's got no mind for strategy. He's just acting on reflex. And Bugai realizes, like, I can't seem to get past this guy. So he does something different, which is he kicks the ball forward past him and then says, like, all right, I'm just going to sprint past him at this point. So we're not just going head to head. So I'll dive forward, shoot past him, and then that's it. And as they go for it, suddenly Hikage reappears right in front of the ball, and she goes, guys, stop this. And they both collide with her immediately because maybe she got a little bit too close to the contest. She gets run over, knocked on her butt, and off-panel explains that she found out that he had, in fact, been trying to return her wallet.
At first, I thought this injury was, like, so much worse because when she goes flying, you can see, like, a trail of blood coming from her face, and I was like, holy shit, did she just get jacked up from this? It does look like she is ultimately just fine, or like she gets maybe like a knocked head and her nose is bleeding a little bit, but I was like worried that they like fucked this girl up for a second.
Concussion. Yeah. Just a little concussion.
Just one of those light couple ones. You have a couple freebies in your life before it starts counting.
Yeah. Yukizuki asks if Bugai is okay with like ceding, quote unquote, to Haitani. And he says, well, I couldn't ignore Hikage's injury, and also I made a big deal about how I was going to put him in his place, and we essentially tied. That's as good as me losing. And Yukizuki says, well, but you kind of seem happy about losing. And he admits he kind of is, because we finally have the last pieces we needed. A defender who's great at stealing balls, and a striker specializes in stealing goals. Because, of course, who should have joined up on the same team? But we knew that from the color page spread at the beginning of the series, and the two of them run into each other in the storage shed after the contest.
Yeah, so next chapter will be our chapter 3, where we're going to decide if we're going to keep this. I imagine that'll be a fun chapter as we get to see what I presume are going to be essentially our two most significant characters in this series kind of interact again, and we get to see a little bit of how that relationship's going to be kind of like decided going forward. We mentioned before that this is essentially how Haikyuu also started. So there's like a certain level of like, I don't want this to just be Hinata and Kageyama. Thankfully, neither of these two give me a Hinata-like personality, but it's still that kind of level.
No.
Like, I don't want this to feel too similar in any way, even though that is indisputably the last time a sports series was popular in this magazine. So that's really the only reason why it's my comparison point. It's not as though other series haven't done this trick before.
It's kind of a hybrid of Haikyuu and Slam Dunk so far, I would say. The dynamic, especially between the protagonist and his rival, is very similar to Sakuragi and Rukawa in some ways, in that they just hate each other and we're both aggressive towards very different ways. But from there, let's talk about Hima-Ten, Quinn.
Yes.
It's chapter 29.
Yeah, chapter 29, parent-teacher conferences. Am I doing this one?
Well, I was pausing because you were... Anyway. So, yeah, it's parent-teacher conferences. I'll do it. It's okay.
Okay.
So, we see that it's time for parent-teacher conferences today. Iemori has been scheduled to be late in the day because his mom has to work until that point. He also knows that Himari's mother is going to be coming in and wonders what she's going to be like. But before we follow up on that, we are introduced to Kanai's mother, who has a very nice blazer. And she just is like, oh, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Iemori is like towering over her, which is kind of cute because, he's a teenage guy. She tries to like fix his tie and then kind of injures herself because she's got a sprained wrist because she just kind of like fell over at the gym recently. But so she's kind of being like, a klutz in the same way that, like some of the girls in his life can be basically. Honoka comes across the scene afterward at this point and is like, what are you doing here? Why are you embarrassing me? As all parents do to their teenage children. Her mother has not fixed Iemori's tie, so she does it instead. And of course, her mom sees it's like, oh, tee. And of course she does.
Yeah.
But there's that little sweet moment between them. Honoka drags her off because they've got to go to their conference. Iemori over it, and all says, and the guy, she got that guy. Honoka could really learn a thing or two from her. All right, judgy, whatever. So she also says that to Iemori that Honoka wanted to hang out with him over summer break, and then says psych because she's from the 90s.
No, that's eternally
Iemori
timeless,
ends
Nick.
up talking to...
She walks up and she's just like, hey, Iemori, how are you doing? Talk to the hand. Hand don't talk back. And he's like, damn, she's so cool.
What's up?
Yeah, she does the Budweiser frog thing. She's there. Everyone's like, holy shit, this girl is culturally relevant right now. Oh my god.
Himari and Iemori run into each other. Himari is waiting for her mom to show up for her conference, and Iemori says like, oh, it's been a while since you've seen your mom, hasn't it? Because she lives on her own, of course. And he asks, are you excited to see her? And she says, hey, don't you think about teasing me about that? And so he backs off a little bit, and she says, I guess your parents are also going to be here. And she thinks like, I hired him and I was kind of worked up to like meet his parents, but they're not going to be here until, so I'm not really sure what to do with myself because I was like amped up to do that, and now that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
which is an interesting position to be in. But then Quinn, I'm not attracted to any of the other female characters in this series.
Is the one with the motorcycle the one that's doing it for you?
Holy shit, this girl is awesome. Himari's mom shows up on a motorcycle wearing cool shades, and all the guys that see her are like, whoa, because
That
they
was
have
you.
eyes and brains.
If you actually zoom in pretty close, that character says, whoa, he's actually Nick if he went to this high school. His beard hasn't grown in yet,
you can
but
see a little.
yeah, you can see a little bit. If you drew that in, you'd be like, this is actually making sense. Because I think that sounds like it's the reaction you had when you turned this page. You're like, whoa, hey there, Miss Himari.
Do you have? Is your dad in the picture, Himari? Because
Yeah, is your mom Miss or Mrs.? What's going on with that?
Hmm. Uh.
Oh, Discord.
Himari. And Himari here. We're hanging out and stuff. Who greets her, and it turns out that she is a little bit familiar with who Iamori is, as we find out later. We cut forward a bit after that. Iamori does his parent-teacher conference with his mother, and then gets a message from Himari asking to meet with her afterwards, and her mom is there and says, like, yeah, so she told me everything that's going on with you two. And so it's very, I'm disapproving of you and will kill you mom mode, and says, if you have been, you've been going in and out of my one and only daughter's place where she lives alone, have you?
Yeah. What? Let me start to get a gauge of who you are as a person, young man, since you seem to be very closely tied to my daughter's life all of a sudden.
And he is very short and polite. He plays it properly. He's like, yes, ma'am, I am her house cleaner. But she also like brings up to Mari, like, you have, so he's making lunch for you, and she says, I pay him for it. And look, this is what the lunches look like. Look how high quality they are. And Himari's mother looks at them and says, these look great. And she's like, like, oh, there's so many of them, because she's, Instagramming like all of them and taking notes on all of them and everything. And she says, like, yeah, I forget about that. You don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't care how good they look. It's the fact that these are really nutritious meals. These are balanced meals he has been making for you. And, I wasn't going to, like, tell you off or anything just because you introduced me to him. As far as the house cleaning is concerned, keep up with the good work with the meals that you're making for my daughter. And she says, as long as you're doing that, I know I don't have to worry about her. So
very sweet. He is mom
nice,
approved now. Yes.
And, yeah. I like how Himari brings that up. That's very cute. Iamori runs into Honoka again, who has just had a bit of a thing happen that she has to bring up with Iamori, because it turns out, seemingly because of her mom's injury, she can't do the housework right now, and she wants to hire Iamori to help out. So all the love interests are getting a bit of Iamori, a bit disappointed in a way when I found that out, because I don't know, it feels like a little samey to have all the girls have that dynamic with him. But I have to admit, he hasn't done a lot with Honoka very recently, so I guess if you need more excuses to have like her kind of like balanced out as a character of relevance, then I guess do that, sure.
There is like a certain level where this character feels like she's sort of fading into the background as Kana is taking over as sort of that like secondary love interest character to compete with the series named after one of the one of the girls. So you're like, all right, well, we can't, obviously you can kind of see where the end game's going to be, but like someone's got to make you think maybe it'll go differently, and it's certainly not Honoka right now. So yeah, I'm not super thrilled that she's also going to be taking on his services for cleaning, but it might be fun. Like, obviously, that's where a lot of his strength is. It's where a lot of his philosophy seems to kind of come from. So we might get something really good out of this, and I'm hoping we will.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a little bit weird to have that realization of like, oh, so he's just gonna be house cleaner for every girl he's a love interest that is a love interest. But
Yeah.
All right. New series alert, Quinn. It's Star of Beethoven. B.
All right, Nick. So
Piano series.
what puzzle series do you have
Didn't come
for
up with
me
one.
based off of characters with B? Oh, damn.
Didn't come up with one. Batista. Solve that, Quinn.
Is it Devon Dudley?
Damn it! How did you know?
He always said Batista a lot.
Batista, yes, obviously.
Yeah.
Chapter 1 of the series is called "The Stars and the Clown." As PPP. This is much more in the line of, Tenmaku Cinema is, I guess, the most recent example of it. The spirit of a talented creator ends up around with a young artist. In this case, though, Beethoven, who is the ghost in this series, is not an invisible spirit. He's just a guy who's around, too.
He's just back.
Can physically interact with things. He's fully back. I feel like the most enjoyable part of this series for me is Beethoven coming to grips with A, being in the modern world, and B, being in Japan and not Germany when he wakes up.
He's like, finish.
And I know it's not technically Germany because it wasn't Germany at the time. He introduces himself, and of course, it's like, what, Beethoven? Okay. And our protagonist is like, all right, clearly this guy is deranged and stuff. And Beethoven is like, how do you not know who I am? And yeah, there's some nice moments here and there because he realizes that, because everyone's saying like, oh, he's that very famous composer, and when he learns like, oh, I'm 200 years in the future and in Japan, as far from Austria as I could possibly be, he realized like, my name and my work endures. And so he says like, I want to just see a piano, because he's like, I'm surely in this world of the internet and smartphones, the piano of the future must be something truly amazing. And our protagonist is like, that really changed that much. Takes him to a public piano, and Beethoven says, what are you talking about? 88 keys and 7 octaves. There can be no doubt now that I am in the future. We get probably my favorite moment in the chapter as well, because when he touches the piano, it's like he's touching this vast tree that's grown huge in the time that he's been gone. That's a cool visual.
Yes.
Nice metaphor. Yeah, our protagonist, whose name is Yaso, is like, all right, goodbye. Discord really doesn't want me to talk about Beethoven, Quinn. Sorry. Yaso is told like, hey, play piano, Yaso. Sit down at this public piano and play, I guess. And they really want him to play, and Yaso's like, I can't play the piano though. And Beethoven says, cease staring into space, or do you wish to play 4 hands? Because they're gonna play the piano together, you see.
Yes.
Because you can do that on a big old piano. 2 people sit down together. And Yasu explains to him, is like, well, you see, I haven't been able to play a piano since I failed in a major competition, and now they want me to play Beethoven's Fifth, the Fate Symphony. And Beethoven's like, why is it called that? That is not what I called it. It is not that. But whatever. So he says, like, you are a pianist yourself, one who can no longer play, to a man who lost his hearing and then his health. Your concerns are trivial. Never mind your feeble excuses. I do like that. So I played while deaf. Fuck you. Yeah. You can play the piano. Do it. And he gives this, brief lecture on the nature of the Fifth Symphony, how it's very personal to him, and how it is, like a shout against despair, essentially. But then he says, anyway, the more words that one uses, the cheaper they seem. Words are not my forte. Let's just play instead.
Let's just
So
play
they play
some
the piano
goddamn
together,
music.
What? This is the Fifth Symphony? Yes! But do not recognize a very obvious tune that begins Beethoven's symphony? Dun 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 dun.
It's like a song that clearly seems to start with some kind of guitar of some kind. I don't believe ever had any experience with that instrument.
They play loud. That's the main thing that I get across from watching this, and it's kind of a weird thing to go from one series that is in recent memory of playing the piano, where lots of wild visuals were thrown out in order to carry across the feeling of music, and in this one, the notes are really vague because they're playing loud, and that's kind of it. Apparently they play good though, because they get some applause afterwards and people going, oh wow, that was incredible. Also, Yasso says, like, I guess you are Beethoven because he played real good and he felt a connection with him, I guess, through their song. And he's like, oh, and I feel like I've been brought back to life by playing this. And there is a nice moment that I feel like should have been emphasized more, which is Beethoven just reacting like, oh, I can hear the applause. And he's very, he reflects on how long it's been since he's actually heard applause, because famously Beethoven did lead performances and stuff after he was deaf and could not enjoy the applause that would have brought him afterwards, and he talks about how his life came to an end, of course, and how he left people, quote unquote, with the message of applaud my friends for the comedy is over. And he realizes, that now, like, in a comedy, you begin in hell and end in paradise, which is basically what's happened to him. He was dying and sick in his bed, and now he's been brought back fully healthy in the future where he can play piano some more. And he declares Yasuo's going to be his disciple.
What I enjoyed the most about this series is just how jacked and angry Beethoven is. This man is just like, he's got shoulders. He's filling out every shirt he's in, and he's fucking furious at this high school kid. Like, he's so mad in every panel you see him in. It just makes for like a very different mentor relationship. Like, we mentioned Tenmaku Cinema, but like, we've had others like this. Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously, to a certain degree, we had actually more to a degree, we had Akara no Go that kind of occupied that. And I appreciate and enjoy that there's just like an anger to the lead that those other series haven't had before.
It's definitely the most interesting aspect of the series so far, is just how in being Beethoven this Beethoven is. As I said quickly during the performance, it's not really visually interesting, at least yet. And so it is kind of a letdown for that when we're just kind of thinking about P.
Sure.
Because of how we kind of really took to it. But I mean, we'll give it a couple more chapters to see if it can find its footing. At least there is the thing you can say, which is that yes, the series that is about the ghost of Beethoven coming back does have an entertaining Beethoven.
Yes. All right, Nick, we're going to move on to Sidcraft, Love is a Mystery. This is Case 11. The great detective teams up on his long overdue homecoming. So, Sidcraft is returning home to the Craft Manor, and he's thinking like, oh, how many years has it been since I've been back home? And he comes home and he's like, Mother, Father, I'm here. He just says Dad and Mom, but I like to think that he would have a more fancy term for them. And he sees a little note on the table. And this is obviously a cipher of some kind, one of those change the letters around, but there is nothing to seem to indicate what you're supposed to except a bunch of symbols at the bottom. I don't know if, Nick, if you spent the time to actually solve this puzzle yourself or not, but I did not
They
care
fuck
to.
it up.
Oh, did they?
They did, because they leave. They eventually just provide the cipher later, and they get it backwards. And so that was actually throwing me off when I was trying to solve it myself. Was because I was trying to make it fit some of the instructions, and I was like, "Why isn't this working?" Turns out you have to go in the opposite direction that it says at a certain point in the instructions. So it's annoying.
There we go. Nick hates it. So he looks at it. Sid immediately figures it out. He's like, oh, okay, they're both away. It's usable. They make everything a cipher. That's really annoying. And he's thinking about how his family could be annoying, and he remembers Zero Craft. And he's like, yes, the criminal that's using my family's surname. I came back home to find out if my parents knew anything. And he hears a sound. He looks over to a door that has another cipher on it that is presumably says something about keep out. And there is a moment where the like a little flashback to the dad comes by, and he's like, you mustn't enter this room, Sidcraft. The valuable secrets of the Craft family are hidden inside. I'm like, okay, Dad. And he's like, is it mom or dad in there? Or is it one of Zero Craft's criminals? So he opens the door, and who should it be, Nick, but Lulu Chat Noir, the Phantom Thief, in a maid outfit, because she's the maid at the house right now, and she says, welcome back, master. We get a little flashback to explain how this happened, with Lulu basically showing up to the Craft Manor and saying, like, I must figure out the detective's weak points, so I'm going to infiltrate his home, and I'm just going to do some light snooping. The Phantom Thief, not very good at being like a phantom right now, kind of just openly starts peeking into windows. And the Craft parents come by and are just like, oh, who are you? And she's panicking. She's like, oh no, I've been caught. I need to think of a lie. And Sid's mom says, oh, I know who you are. I put an ad out recently for a maid in the newspaper. That must be you. You came just at the right time. And Lulu just went along with that story. So now she is in the manor, and she's just like, yeah, I received a telegram, or the wife's like, I received a telegram and I have to get going. So she's just like, I work here now, I guess. So I'm not sure exactly how much of this story she relays to Sid, because it would imply she would have to kind of give away her own game. But Sid responds as though the story has been relayed to him, and he's like, okay, I guess I'm a little confused, but it seems like they caused you trouble, so I'm very sorry about that. But he is confused because he's like, why is Lulu here? Like, she's starting to like...
Right.
I'm starting to run into her a lot that something must be going on, but I can't figure out what. And all that aside, I can't be alone in a room with a girl. He gets very nervous.
I want to powerbomb this boy.
Yeah.
I want to bully him.
Well, we need to get Yoru in here then. The gates come down. And...
No, not that kind of bullying. No.
Oh, well then you had to get... Who's like a big physical bully in these series? Who's like the Flash Thompson, Nick, of the manga universe?
of Shonen Jump manga. Yeah. I mean, the problem with bullies in manga is that they get their comeuppance very easily. So there's not a lot of them.
Very true. Sid's like, oh no, I let my guard down. Basically, my family has booby-trapped all the doors in the house that you have to solve riddles to get through. And it was even a pain when I was a child and I needed to use the bathroom. And it would be like, figure out who the criminal is. And a young Sid is just like, I don't know. I have to pee. Yep. So Lulu's like, well, that does make sense that, Sid's skills in deduction have been honed at such a young age. But the riddle to how to escape is all in this cipher. And it mentions in the instructions to the cipher that you have to work as a pair. And if you do that, the Crafts family secrets will be yours. Valuable secrets, we should say. And we do get a brief explanation about how the cipher works. As Nick says, it's apparently wrong.
I think that what I was interpreting was it was saying how to solve it. but what it is actually doing is it's showing you how to encrypt it to be with. So you have to basically reverse the instructions that are on there in order to decipher it.
Okay, that would make sense. So they're like, wow, this is really impressive. It basically is instructions to play a Twister-like game where you have to put different extremities on different positions. And as anyone who's ever played Twister knows, it is an extremely close-up and intimate game, and Sid is not doing well about that because he's like, oh my gosh, we are really, really close. In all my days, I've never seen or heard of an apparatus this bizarre. There is an extremely cute moment, though, where he's like, besides, I wouldn't possibly do anything because this girl is the girlfriend of my dear assistant, Elio. And I'm like, where did you
He
get...
imagines Elio as being so tall, too.
He does. It's very adorable. And you're just like, I'm curious what impetus got you to start shipping those two. Like, it's not as though we had a scene where the two had to fake being a couple for any reason. So he really did just read into something. He's like, these two are so happy and beautiful together. It's very cute. Anyways, Lulu hits one of the clues and she's like, all right, I've reached it. What's the last thing we have to do? And Sid's brain is completely gone. He's just like, Cypher, what's that again? Oh, I'm doing okay today. How are you?
This voice is. I'm going to hit my limit, Quinn.
Sorry. I'll try to make him cooler. So they managed to succeed at all that, and Sid's like, well, I'm really sorry. That was very unbecoming of me, but it opens up a little box, and they're like, yes, the secrets of the Kraft family. And the secrets are a bunch of precious family photos of Sid that his parents have taken. And Sid is very upset about this because he's like, they're nothing but embarrassing photos. His parents come home at this point, and they're like, all right, well, hey, welcome back, son. Thank you for house sitting Lulu. And they respond to the Zero Craft thing. And they're like, a criminal using the craft name, Zero Craft. No idea. Never heard of them. So there's the end of that, basically. And Sid is upset because his parents are being extremely affectionate and romantic in this moment. And he's like, I've come here for nothing, and my parents keep embarrassing me. But Lulu is sitting nearby is like, this actually seems very sweet. Like, the fact that your family went through all this effort to hide all these pictures of you shows, like, you're incredibly loved. And she has to break up that tension by being like, all right, and now to serve you a piece of cake, open up. And he's like, I'm an adult. I can eat my own cake.
I don't really understand her explanation here because she says this is common in romance novels, and I figured as a maid it's something that I should do.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's a bit of a break in the logic between the left and right halves of that word bubble to me.
No, I mean, remember, she's also a romance nerd, just like Sid is. So in all the weird novels, I guess they have the sensibilities of a maid cafe as well in Sherlock Times. So
yeah, I guess.
Sid's mom's like, oh, you two are a perfect match. You must be so cozy solving that riddle together earlier. And they're still just like kind of fighting, so they don't really react to it. But the dad's like, oh, you're being such a scamp. You didn't put out an ad for the maid in the paper. And just like, yeah. But the mom reveals, yeah, that's the daughter of the Phantom Thief family, the Chat Noirs, Lulu Chat Noir. And in order to rear such a powerful detective, he needs a good partner, someone to match his wit, essentially. Plus, he's so clueless when it comes to love, just like you, honey. And the dad's like, ho, 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 don't say that. It's very silly. Anyways, we end the chapter with Lulu coming home and going to her mom like, I have found a secret. Sid does not, he has no immunity to women, so he's remarkably vulnerable to seduction. So fear not, I have the thing. And then the chapter ends with a little joke, and she's like, now how exactly do I go about seducing someone?
It's a nice little joke to end things on. I'm glad that we didn't just have like Lulu constantly be like, he has no weaknesses, I've got to find a weakness. It's funnier when she's like, well, clearly I need to seduce him.
Yeah.
How do I do that? That's a funny thing to end on. And I actually like the thing where his parents understand who who she is, and they're just
Yes.
like, no, we ship it because she'll improve him. That's a nice little thing there. Um, I'm fucking so done with all these. Look at Sid being frustrated. I hate that. I just don't think that the way that it's executed with his character is amusing, and I'm getting annoyed by it. I don't even know if I could tell you why it happening with him specifically bothers me, but it does.
Yeah,
So
well,
I'm getting tired of this shit. All right, let's move on.
I'm sorry, it doesn't feel like it's going to change.
It's not. Nope. Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi, Chapter 31. The Demon Lords take the field. Someone who is working in Convenience Mart hears noise outside, walks out, and there's some demons that try and kill him. But fortunately, Mr. Sakaki and Kiyoshi exorcise them. And then afterwards, Sakaki is like, "Hey, can I have some cigarettes?" Kiyoshi is a bit worried about Akari because she could get hurt in this kind of situation. Sakaki says like, "Hey, come on, she's reliable when you need to count on her." And he reiterates like, "Look, we can't just worry about the rank and file demons. We've got to be the ones focusing on the demon lords. And once we're finished, let's throw a party at the gates of hell. There's no death flags on me. What are you talking about?" They go up to confront the demon lords that are on the hand that has descended from the heavens. We get introduced to some of them in quick, short order. There's the Batman who laughs, Mukurojima. There is Sunglasses, Gorgon Mead. There is, I like the six eyes, Baku Yoraku. That's just a gas mask, Hydraco. And there's Brush Your Teeth, Kurose Sata. And like, we're gonna kill all these strong exorcists and stuff. Hydraco is looking around wanting to kill Kiyoshi because she liked Astaroth because Quinn, if there's a villainous female in a bad guy group, they've got to have a crush on the leader. It's a rule.
It's just how it works.
Have that.
No.
That's gotta be. Also, we established that Sata is trying to get some revenge for his older brother. Maybe, but he denies it. It turns out that his older brother is that very first demon lord that Kiyoshi exorcised at the very beginning of the series. So there is a little bit of extra stuff there. And he also, but he tries to like play like, oh, it wasn't actually important that he got exorcised because he wasn't really a demon lord. Of all the members of the 13 Club, he was by far the weakest. It doesn't count. And then another weaker demon in the 13 raises his hand. It's this eyeless guy with horns who is the 13th of all of them, so he's the weakest. And he's like, I'm weaker than him, though. Oh yeah, I guess you are. Oh. So.
Everyone's like,
I do like the vibes on this guy. I really like the vibes on this guy. Just this big mouth, no eye having dude. Just, I'm kind of weaker than that guy that you were hating on just now.
Hey guys, I know we were dunking on him, but I'm actually a little bit weaker. Like, I used to look up to that guy, just like a heads up.
He hops down in order to go and cause some trouble. We see a little bit of one of the guys shielding himself against the blast and then punching him and everything like that. His name is Iwao Tatajima, and he's a cool deputy guy. He gets Goomba stomped by Moroku immediately. And he's like, all right, gotta take on some guys and kill people and stuff. He gets blocked by the shield dude, but the shield dude gets knocked into a wall, and he realizes, oh shit, this guy is a top level demon. And so it's just to reiterate, yes, this guy is the weakest of the demon lords. He is, however, still very, very, very strong, even despite that. Mokurojima has a demonic megaphone with teeth, I guess. And so he makes an announcement, which is, I have an offer for you. I'm going to name 3 exorcists right now, and I will gladly buy any of these from you for a high price. Those are Tenma Sakaki, Kyoka Kunogane, and Tsurugi Hijiri. Tsurugi hears this and decides, all right, heard you was talking shit, summons his quote unquote Blade Runner drying pole. It's a massive sword. He slashes it from miles away and cuts through the hand that they're on, which also cuts through Mukurojima. And of course, he's a super demon lord. He's not finished off by this. He's just kind of pissed off about it.
Yes.
That's our chapter, though.
Yeah, it's exciting. I like it. I like the little like call out to like, hey, if you have any of these three, and they happen to be the three leaders of the different divisions within the Exorcist organization, it's like, all right, cool. Like I can get on board with this. Cool little ending to it as well as they cut apart the hand reaching out of the sky. It works. It looks like we're gonna get maybe some solo fights as well.
It's also nice that, I mean, we're not getting super deep stuff from the villains that are being introduced, but we've got a gaggle of villains here who clearly like have different personalities and slightly different motivations. So they're like characters, and that's nice.
Yes. All right, Nick, let's talk about Marriagetoxin chapter 116.
Yeah.
We have Kirito, who showed up last time, literally kind of surfing through the ground with the sword, and he's up in the air now. We have Garo tries to use some smoke to, cover up and misdirect him, but Kirito just uses a sword, immediately kind of dispenses of all the smoke and everything like that. And he's still coming, and they're like, oh, he's using that thing used on the wind wheel users. Interesting. So Garo shouts out to Kitasaki, like, all right, we got to use this chance to get further away. Cut over to another car just driving behind them. And it's this one guy who's like, it's too late. I'm not going to make it. It's 30 minutes. She's going to get on that plane to Canada. And then, oh, why did I let her leave without saying anything? And the voice is like, my boy, it's too early to give up. Like, Mr. Driver. And he's like, I got a son around your age and he dreams of being a pastry chef. My guy's back. It's the pastry chef guy. Or the dad of the pastry chef guy, I should say. He is there, and he says, hey, my son had dreams of being a pastry chef, and when he told me that, I realized that was put on earth to help dreamers like you. So rest assured, leave your future in the hands of this old shooting star from the mountain pass. I won't let you down. Unbeknownst to all that, Kirito lands on their car using his sword, and he just kind of starts to sharpen his blade as it skates along the ground. And it seems like he superheats his fists to super hardens them to basically super sharpen his sword at this point. The passenger inside of the car is like, oh no, the person driving that truck is in the wrong lane, and they're asleep. And the cab driver is just like, no, we're going too fast. I don't know. Look, I'm going to get us through this. I don't know how, but I'm not the immortal shooting star for nothing. And he survives just by... Oh, my page stopped working. He thinks he did something, and what actually happened is Kirito essentially just cut the car in front of them in half, and they drove through.
Yeah.
Sorry, give me one sec. The player on my browser always kind of messes up. So I have to load it up on my phone. So they drive through the truck, and it's going, decently well. Kirito is now gaining on them a little bit. The cab driver just thinks it's his lucky stars, basically, that this worked.
So they confront each other on top of another truck
Yes.
that is driving. And Garo realizes that he's being pushed by this guy. He can't even keep up with toxin vision.
Yes.
And he realizes as well, Kirito is holding back against him. It's not actually taking him super seriously.
This guy is super good at his job, and we haven't even seen his depths yet. So Chinatsu runs out. She tries to get involved with this. She's like, I gotta help him. I don't want to see him get hurt even more. She goes and starts pulling out her police tape. And Kirito has this moment, his eyes turn, and he locks on. He swings at Chinatsu. Her tape is just starting to come out. It looks like she's going to get done, but Garo leaps it away, takes the blow for her, and gets slashed across the back. And he's like, damn. Hey, Chinatsu, though, don't worry. Your client isn't me. You don't need to protect me. It's fine. But he's like, I shouldn't have lost sight of my duty, and or Chinatsu rather, is upset because she's like, I lost sight of my duty and I got him hurt and I failed as a protector. And we see Garo start to pull out a needle that Kirito finds interesting. He's like, this guy intends to take me down with him. We cut inside the car where Nabe is sleeping, and she sniffs the air. And there's like a swing of these two characters coming at each other. You know, Kirito's sword's coming in. Garo has two syringes. It looks like they're going to crash. And Nabe comes in and just slams the both of them down and knocks them to the floor with her cane, essentially. And what looks like her bottom. She's like, oh, hey, you two, you can actually stop fighting now. How about we actually have some afternoon tea together? And they're just driving along on the top of this truck. And then the next shot is them all having tea together at some kind of rest stop, I guess. And
yeah, it seems that way. It's just a big old patio.
Kirito is not like his usual badass samurai self. He's like, no, Nabe-chan, you really worried us. And he's apparently a very big grandma's boy. But Chinatsu is wrapping up Garo with all this tape, and he's like, we had no idea that our client was the former Arima head family. And he's like, well, why did you guys, why'd you sneak out of the mansion without telling anybody if you just talked to us? And Nabe says, well, I mean, it was just too embarrassing. I couldn't just tell you all that I wanted to go out and see my first love. Now, could I? And we get a little panel at the end of the chapter showing that damn cab driver made it there on time. The guy makes it and reunites with his girlfriend. And the cab driver just gives a big thumbs up that says, never give up on your dreams. So
yeah,
I love the idea that this guy just hangs around and he drives people to their dramatically significant situations.
Mr. Driver rules, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that get set up in this one chapter for the arc we have ahead, establishing just how formidable this guy is. There is, of course, an explanation for why they're doing this, and of course, very importantly, establishing a big hook for Chinatsu in this arc, which is that her skills are being counteracted by her attachment to Garo, and so that's going to have to be something for her to have to deal with. I really like the very guilty look she has as she's wrapping up Garo, but it's also kind of just a lost sort of look about her. I do hope that I do feel like this might be something that you kind of need to maybe tread carefully if you're going to do, because we did just get done dunking on a series for neglecting its female characters once they become attached to a guy.
Uh-huh.
And so that is, what has happened here is that she has been nerfed because she's attached to Garo. You can still do that kind of story and still do it in an interesting way. And I do have faith in Marriagetoxin, but I am just letting people know I have the awareness that this could be problematic.
Oh, I definitely was annoyed when I saw not only did she need to be protected, but that she then feels really bad afterwards as though she screwed up. And I was like, I kind of feel like this L should be on Garo for, she should have been able to, get herself out of that situation or maybe strike a blow. And Garo should have been focused on, defeating this person more than, taking blows. It just feels like Chinatsu should be enough of a presence in this world, a specialist, that she shouldn't need protecting from everything. But I know they're trying to build up Kirito to be a super strong character. It's just, you have a lot of super strong, cool ladies. Can they do something cool, please?
Let's move over to New Exorcist, which is also full of super strong, cool ladies.
Yeah.
Quinn, obviously.
Speaking of ladies and them getting spotlights, I guess.
Chapter 85, A Guy with No Actual Skill. Gakuro's fight with Kabane is reaching the climax, and Kabane is like, this is bullshit. His leg is broken. How is he even standing, let alone holding his hollow weapon? And Gakuro is like, he's at his limit too! The end of the fight is here! And Karasu Tengu is like, I don't know how he is standing, but he is. And then he realizes, oh, he's forcing his body. He's reinforcing it with shadows that are wrapped around him like bandages, and he's puppeting his body with bands of shadows. To which Kabane says, don't screw with me. I'm going to dig my tiptoes into the ground to prevent myself from falling over and get on you and punch you. He says, I'm going to take you with me. You're not going to past me. And Gakuro is taken off of the bridge, which leads down into an abyss. I didn't realize how much of the floor he caved away. What is below them? I don't know. It doesn't seem like they were on a mountain before. There was a sewer beneath them. I don't know why they've got such a distance to fall.
If video games have taught me anything, Nick, beneath the surface sewer level is like a deeper sewer level. And then if you go a level below that, you find the Hydro City zone from Sonic 3. Like, it's like a whole new world is down there. So maybe that's what this is broken into. And you don't want to fall into that, because then you have to go and fight Eggman down there, and he's got the whole spinny vortex thing. It's a whole mess. You don't want to deal with it.
So Kabane tackles Gakuro off the bridge, and he's like, I can't believe I had to do this, but it's over now. And then Gakuro's body disperses into shadows, which he, can do and stuff. And Kabane is falling off the bridge, looks up. Gakuro is just looking down from the bridge at him and just starts walking along in order to get to his destination. And Kabane says, hey, we're not done. We're not done fighting. Come fight me. We're not done here. Stop. And Gakuro says, I am in a hurry. I don't have time for you.
Which could be such a cool line if he hadn't spent a month on this fight. I understand that he doesn't exist in the same time our circulation did, but it was 4 chapters worth, which seems to indicate he did spend time on this match. So it does kind of sound like a worthless insult. Like, I don't have time for you. It's like, seemed like you had a lot of time for him. Actually seemed like you were getting your ass whooped quite a couple times in that fight.
Anyway, let's have a couple of chapters to explain that Kabane is actually definitely a sympathetic character.
Yep.
All right. Did we do that? We do that? Okay. So he's upset that Gakuro has done this. And Karasu Tenku says, oh, good job, Lord Gakuro. You should use a recovery talisman. There should be 2 remaining. Okay.
Gakuro's just
I guess we won't get worried.
Yeah, Gakuro's just gonna keep getting his shit pushed in and then sensu beamed back to perfection for the next fight.
But Gakuro is not responding to Karasu-Tenku's advice, and we hear a whoomp. And then we cut over to a girl who's got a guitar case on her back and what looks like a devil tail coming off of her. And she's looking in some tanks at people. And she's like, good. You're all good kids. And then blood, blah, 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 against a window. Okay. We'll find out the context of this later. She says, I need a break. The prison's been here basically forever, and so have I. Every day the kids train by fighting. Sometimes they go up in the world, sometimes they slip down to this level, and sometimes they fall even farther and get scrapped. I've been watching it happen for centuries. Okay. And then she thinks, I wish somebody would come along and bust this place up. Goes to a vending machine, which is, what you do.
I love that this secret evil base has a vending, gets stocked with new sodas and chips and shit like that. Like, somebody has to come in and make sure the evil child raising layer has barbecue Fritos, and they're just I really thought the sour cream and onions would have sold more. When
I worked at a overnight shift at a hotel, Quinn, there was a guy from a third-party company that we, basically paid a fee to have a vending machine and shared the profits with them, who would come from the third-party company in the middle of the night once a week and restock it. What company is catering to the evil Shiroha or to the evil Fujino estate on the same floor where these children are being made to massacre each other?
Yeah, that's where they're okay, so you have to kind of stalk with a blindfold on, or you just got to be kind of cool with some war crimes. Are you cool with war crimes? That's the interview process for this place. They're your rates we don't actually care about. We'll pay whatever. If you were to see maybe a small child trying to run away from their fate, would you let them go or would you trip them? Because we really need you to pick one of those options.
So the girl can take.
Oh, I think we lost Nick Ben here for a second again. She opens up this can and she's like, dang, it's actually really hard to open this one, and she just kind of throws it. Like, she's all angry.
Watching children be murdered for years and years and years. I don't know how much of that got through. It doesn't matter. So
nothing, unfortunately. She threw her can and it hit Gakuro.
Yep, so Gakuro is revealed, and then he wakes up later on. Turns out she's got a ukulele, and she's been playing it while he's been sleeping, using her lap as a pillow. And so he gets away from her after she says, "If you're feeling okay, I want my lap back." And then so he does that, and then she says, "I said if you're feeling okay."
Yeah, she's like she's one of those.
Get back on the lap pillow.
She's like a short queen, Nick. She's an angry short queen. People love those. It's like I was already looking at this girl. I was like, she's coming into this harem. Just you wait. One way or another, she's going to be in these scenes.
She's kicking down the door to be in the harem. Like, she's just like, get on my lap pillow. Look up at me. Get under this blanket. I'll play the guitar for you. Look at my boobs. Anyway, that's happening. Gakuro, and Karasu is like she is formidable because she's mommy. She's short mommy. So, all right. Gakuro introduced himself, and then she says, my name. For now, call me Kyokatsu. Kyokatsu? But Quinn, that's the name of the spirit that Fujino made. That's what?
What?
Okay, that's the end of the chapter. That's as much as I want to cover. There's like other stuff.
Yeah, you're fine. There's not much really going on here. There's just a preview to one of the bad guys I guess we're gonna run into, and it's not all that exciting. I think I'm gonna jump in and take over here just because the disconnect is really bad for this quick second. So Akane-banashi story 145. Sit back and watch. So it's the first appearance of Akane Arakawa after a while, and the Zenzos here. They're all new people. Time has passed. They have no idea. Like, have you ever heard of her? No. Apparently she made a big stir. It's just kind of weird. She's coming back out of nowhere, right? And who should show up but Rion, the guy who was angry about the tea, and he's just like, "Oh, hey, yep. I didn't realize you'd be back by now." And he's just like, "Oh, well, I had some business, but I came back with lots of goodies to share." And they're like, "Oh, wow, thanks so much." And he's giving things out, and he's like, "Oh, would you like some too, Tyson?" And we see Tyson Arakawa, a new member of the Arakawa school, who seems to be like a young guy with scruffy hair, and he humps and goes, "I've been asked to run an errand by the person in charge." And one of the Zens is just, he's always like that. He's blunt, he's unfriendly, and he's uncooperative, especially for a guy who just started.
He's trying to do his job. How dare him?
What a son of a bitch. Rian says, "Oh, I know how it feels. I had troubles with that in the past, and I lost the trust of my peers, and I went through a lot, and I hope he doesn't turn out like I did." And the Zens are very impressed because it's a very... it's a powerful sentiment.
What a cool guy he is.
Yeah, they're like, this guy's learned so much. They're like, "Oh, hey, are you familiar with Akane Arakawa? She's scheduled to appear today, and we were just wondering what she's like." And he's like, yes. He starts to rub wing his hair in his fingers. He's like, her. Cut over to Tyson, who is picking up things from the store. He hears like a sound coming outside of the convenience store, and it's Akane with all of her luggage, just like, Tyson walks by and goes like, humph, and then walks up and offers her a bottle of water, a drink essentially, and he's like, "Hey, you're making yourself
Notably, he doesn't know who she is.
Yes,
he thinks that she's a homeless woman.
Yeah, he
says look, get out of here, but he does offer her a drink before that.
Yeah. So Akane just responds, she's like, "The show, I had to do the show," and she drinks a little bit. She's like, "I feel a little bit better." Obviously explains the situation to Tyson. He's like, "All right, well, you better be today's performer, because if you're not, And Akane's just like, oh, the taxi driver was so reckless, and I got double motion sickness from the car and the plane. Someone is trying to explain who Akane is to him. I presume one of her members of the Shikama school. I'm not sure which one this is meant to be, but I presume not Gakuro, but fuck, what's the one who sucks? Guriko. I'm assuming this is, who says like, "Oh, you curious about her? Well, I'll tell you. She's the only Rakugoku who ever got a Futatsume recommendation for your master. That's my little sister apprentice, Akane Arakawa." And Tyson's just like, "This is her? She doesn't seem that impressive to me." And she's like, "Hey, what's with the attitude? I'm still your older sister apprentice. Are you listening to me?" And he says, "Look, could you maybe save the bossiness until you've acted like my older sister apprentice?" And he's, carrying all of her luggage. She says, "I like him. I think we're going to get along fine." So she shows up. She greets the Zenza. "Hi, I'm Akane. I'm going to throw her up. I'm going to lay down. I did bring gifts, though. So nice to meet you all. Enjoy for everyone. But do you mind if I go lay down? I'm not feeling very well." So they say yes. And we do get some shots of Akane that seem to show that she is grown up a little bit more. There's like a little bit more maturity in her face now. And she goes to lay down, and they're like, "She's just totally hungover, isn't she?" "Yeah." Just like Ani-san said, she's horrible. Akane Arakawa is the worst. And Tyson's like, "What did he say?" And she said, "Well, he said that when she was a Zenza, she got hung out to dry for being such a problem child, and he warned her about her behavior, and she called him out in a performance, and she specifically had it out for him, the nicest guy around, who would do something like that." And they all believed it. That whole string of events really put me through hell in the long run. "Serves you right." We see Rian just smiling. He's like, "I really had to slum it. I really had to slum it for a while before I restored my reputation." He has like a big celebration. He's like, I'm a good person now, see?" And it doesn't seem like they completely believe it. But he says, "Nerves will ruin your performance. She hasn't been back in 3 years. That's awkward enough, and now she's ostracized. Plus, she's feeling sick to boot. It's now your turn to eat dirt, Akane Arakawa." So the Zenza asks...
So what's this guy been up to in his life since then? Like, in terms of, like, having anything going on in his life except hating Akane?
Yeah, he's just a number one hater. He just has nothing but hating Akane energy on him, and he, wormed his way, I guess, back into a somewhat decent reputation. The Zenzas argue about who should bring her tea, but Tyson does it, and Akane's like, "That's very thoughtful of you." And he's like, "It's just my job." So she's drinking the tea, and she's like, "Good old taste of Japan." She's like, "Why don't you ask for a sub?" He's like, "Why would I do that?" He's like, "The reason is obvious. You're a wreck right now. Plus, there's something shady going on." Akane's like, "Well, that is true, but if that, Tyson's like, if that's true, then why did you agree to?" And Akane is holding up the drink. She's like, "Because I still haven't showed you how an older sister apprentice acts. Don't worry. Just sit back." And she sits up, and she's gotten dressed. She's in her outfit. And she says, "And watch a real Futatsume performance." So next chapter looks like we're going to get Akane's little show. And maybe she finds a way to dunk on Reisei in a different way.
Yeah, in a way that she can get away with because she's of a higher rank or something like that, or maybe it's just like more elegantly done.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, maybe it's just gonna be like a real sly kind of thing or something like that. Who even knows? She might not even. She might just make a story about being the bigger person, and he just feels shitty as a result. So we shall see. We're gonna wrap up this week with One Piece chapter 1139, Mountain Eater. Our cover page is two people brought before who's who. Might be page 1 and Ulti. Guess we'll find out. Inside the castle, the characters are looking around for the key, but they're like, well, the guards don't know where it was. In fact, if anyone knew where the key was, it would probably be Chief Ja Rule. And Zoro's like, "Yeah, Sword Gramps. I wonder if he'd give it to us." And Roto's like, "He would never give it to you. Freeing Loki is a terrible crime for us." Zoro's like, "Hey, we haven't decided if we're going to free him yet either. But Nami calls the attention to everybody, and they go into a room, and it's the room where Shamrock and not Gonzo, Gunko, I think, appeared in. We can still see the sigil on the ground, the demon summoning circle. And they're like, holy shit, the scars here of battle is crazy. Even the ceiling's missing. What's that strange mark? And they see it, and I think it's Roto who says that's the thing they use in ritual demon summoning circles in other countries. Like, what the fuck? They call demons? He's like, I don't know, maybe. So Luffy's like, yeah, I feel like I've seen something like this, though, recently, and isn't able to put two and two together. He's not that kind of person. But a voice calls out to him, Straw Hat Luffy, I've been hoping to meet you. And they're like, who is this? Are you a demon summoned to this place? Roto starts freaking out. He's like, we must flee before the ghosts haunt us. But an axe gets in front of their way, and they get dropped. There's like a moment Zoro catches Nami and everything like that. And we're introduced to the human, a former pirate living in Elbath, Mr. Ya. And Roto's like, oh, Sir Ya, it's you. Well, that's good. I felt, and Ya's like, I felt a very abnormal hockey coming from the castle area, or it seems to have left, but now I find you here instead. And I've heard stories all about you, Luffy, including that you took care of Kaido, and I'd love to go traveling out Wano again. And they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, this guy goes by Mr. Ya, and you were by the school, right? Did you not meet Ripley there? This is her husband. And they're like, oh, so you're the dad of that giant shrimp. And he's like, yep, I am. So you met Colin and Ripley, and he took on a lot of a giant's blood. He grew up without me being able to hold him in my arms. Would you believe he's 20? Aww. And my Ripley is 80. She's older than me. And he basically has his little stand-up routine memorized. He's like, let me tell you, marrying a giant is not worth it. I get older, they stay the same age. Nami's like, that is a good point. I'm just surprised to hear someone's actually done it. And Mr. Ya's like, yeah, love is free. There are many half-blood races out there. They're all beautiful, basically. Zoro's like, you seem to know a whole lot. Who are you? And he shouts out that he is a preacher of love. And Luffy laughs and notes, this guy sounds like what Sanji will be when he gets older.
Much more practiced and like bearable, and honestly that's like admirable in the way that he preaches it, though.
Yes, a more mature Sanji. It is worth noting, I believe Sanji is like canonically like 22 years old or something like that, so
right,
makes sense that he would need to grow up a little bit more. Luffy asks him, like, hey, we're searching for the key to Loki's cuffs. And Roto's like, don't just tell him about it. Also, he wouldn't have it. And Luffy's like, oh, just forget I said anything. And Mr. Ya's like, it's too late for that. I mean, Loki, right? If there's one thing I love, it's other people causing trouble. And Nami's like, hey, that's really tacky. Don't tell anybody about this. He's like, young lady, secrets are meant to be shared. There's a moment there where he asks Luffy, he's like, do you know what kind of man Loki is? Because, like, if the worst should happen because of this, what's your plan? And Luffy just says, I'll beat him up and put chains back on him. But Mr. Ya's like, years ago, a guy named Red Hair Shanks captured Loki, and prior to that, no one else is able to stop him. He starts to continue on. He's like, you don't know what kind of powers he has or what damage he might do. And Luffy just takes that time to be like, let's look for the key. This guy's going to be talking for a while. And Mr. Ya, watching this, just sees this and is reminded. We get a little flashback of two people with Gold Rogers. And Rogers being like, I'm sick of all your warnings. Are you afraid? And the person in the flashback says, I didn't say that. If you want to stop me, you'll have to do it by force. He's like, I'm telling you to be aware of the things going on, you idiot. And we'll know the reason for that a little bit later. But Mr. Ya says, hey, Roto, go up to the throne and push on it. Cut over to Ja Rule's village, where I forget which one this is. Omishi, I think, is like, in the old Pirate King's crew, there were two people who were especially strong aside from Rogers. And Usopp's like, well, we know Rayleigh is probably one of them. Who is the other one? And they're like, yeah, One time, Roger the captain needed to rest and heal, so he had this other fellow went to a hospital in the mountains, and unfortunately got surrounded by a bunch of enemy pirates. But this guy took out hundreds of enemies with just 2 axes. Like, whoa, by himself? And they're like, yeah. And more so, in the place where they fought, there was only a bald mountainside left behind with not a single tree left standing. And because of that, he gained the epithet of the Mountain Eater. And after first mate Silver's Rayleigh, this man was known as the Pirate King's left arm. Cut over to that secret room, and it's a treasure chamber. All the treasures have been taken, because obviously they would be at this time. It's not that secret of a place to get to. So Nami is very upset that she's been lied to, and Rhoda's like, I said there was a treasure room. I didn't say there'd be treasure in it. But there is a pedestal, and on it a key. And Luffy says, there we go. Here's something that no burglar would care to take. And Mr. Ya takes off his hat, starts picking up the key, and he says, in other words, releasing Loki is something even the wicked dare not to do. So you're still going to take this key? And there's a little bit of like a flashback or jump backwards to Omishi describing to Usopp, like, oh yeah, that guy we just said, he's here. The legendary figure who stood shoulder to shoulder with Roger and Rayleigh. The left arm of the Pirate King, Scooper Gabon. And we get this final page of Mr. Ya holding this key, and he's saying, all right, well, if you want this key, then take it from me, if you can.
I do love Mr. Ya's whole thing. I love his badass hippie look, the Hawaiian shirt he's wearing under his poncho or whatever you call it. He looks both intimidating and fun to hang out with. Very good, cool vibes and design on that. This is a very entertaining chapter. Just a lot of nice, goofy interaction between Luffy and Co. and this new character as we get more and more of lore that I guess is important, but I don't remember lore in One Piece, so I'll have to take your word for it.
There were people who are wondering, they're like, I wonder if Nick knows who Scooper Gabon is. And I was like, I don't know who Scooper Gabon is. I think I've heard that name referenced like once or twice, but it was like one of those like, I'm going to store this in a corner of my mind so it's familiar, but I don't remember the context anymore. So I don't blame you for not knowing who this guy is supposed to be, but obviously they give all the context to this chapter. This is essentially the Sanji of Roger's Pirates.
Yeah, and that's fine. You know, I really like that we're getting a little bit of a confrontation here over it. That just like, hey, fight me for this key. I'm, excited to see what we get going ahead into this.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to get something there, a little mini sort of training arc or something like that for Luffy. I do also like, as people are bringing out, that there's gold Rogers, silvers Rayleigh, and copper Gabon, basically, Scooper. So there's some very cool stuff going on there. And yeah, this is just a cool figure to meet. We're seeing all the big characters. And I also like where we see the obvious similarities between this character and Sanji, and also kind of where there are differences. Because I think it'd be kind of boring if these characters were like exact one-for-ones for each other. But it is very funny that the Roger Pirates also kind of had like the exact monster trio setup that the Straw Hat Pirates have.
Yeah, and I also do just appreciate that we just have this, cool new character who is just basically saying, love is love. And,
Yeah.
and no one contradicts him on it. It's like, that's nice. That he just says, like, love is great. It doesn't matter how you love. Love is cool. And it's like, all right, yeah, nice. And then he says, I love when other people cause trouble. All right, you're kind of a wild card, but that's fine too. So,
Yeah.
That's going to do it, I guess, for a weekly manga recap. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I can actually talk normally over the connection, because it's been a bit of a struggle in the second half of the podcast, to say, tell me what was your favorite chapter and who's your MVP, Quinn?
Yeah, I think my favorite chapter this week is probably going to be Blue Box. It's a very, very sweet series this week. As I said, I love that it broke my heart by showing us how much it's meant to Yumika and how much she's crying, and then healed it by showing us how much her relationship with Chinatsu is important. And I don't know, as just someone who's a little bit older in life, it's very nice to be like, you're going to really appreciate the memories of this, I think. 10, 15 years down the line, Yumika. You're going to really appreciate that you had like Chinatsu in your life at this point in time. It's very sweet.
I'm going to echo that. I think that there were a lot of really good chapters this week. I thought that Akane-banashi was a great setup chapter. I liked the stuff that happened in One Piece. There's some interesting stuff happening in Marriagetoxin as well. And I really, really liked as well Ichi the Witch, which I almost picked. But I think just because of how deeply emotional and real this feels, this moment of regret and moving on, and also gratitude that we get a whole bunch of big emotions for the young characters that we have in this series, to have all of them happening in a single chapter, that definitely stole the show for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. My series of the week, or character MVP of the week, I think is going to be Scooper Gaban from One Piece, or Mr. Yeah. I don't know which nomenclature I'm supposed to be using right now, but that seems like an extremely significant character. I love how he's introduced. It makes this arc feel significant. Like, hey, we need more Roger pirates. That's how big this all is, and I don't know, it just seems super cool. I love thinking about the differences between he and Rayleigh, and then thinking about the differences between Zoro and Sanji has been fun for me.
Yeah. I am very torn on who's going to be my pick. I kind of want it to be Akane. Kind of want it to be... I kind of want it to be Himari's mom. And I kind of want it to be Beethoven, honestly, because without him in that series, this series is Star of Beethoven without Beethoven is dead on arrival.
Well, it'd be a wild move to call the series Spirit of Beethoven and not have Beethoven in it. I'd be like, well, guys, that was your first mistake. I feel like you should have put Beethoven in it somewhere.
There's your problem. It's really weird because I don't think she does a whole lot in this chapter, but I'm also still just very drawn into everything going on with Descartes right now. Like, she doesn't do a lot in this chapter, but even so, it's like, no, like, she is really fascinating to me right now, and I will pick her for that.
I would pick her if I could put Deschika, because that ship is fucking... It's riding high. If you bought in stocks on that ship, you are just getting dividends every week.
They're just very good friends. That's it. What did the audience pick?
The audience picked Ichi the Witch as the chapter of the week, and I believe it looks like it is pretty unanimous that people are picking Scooper Gaban from One Piece as the character of the week. Though I do see like picks for Descartes and others in there, so...
Guys, that is going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap.
Also some for the short queen from Noose Exorcist as well.
That's going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap. Everybody, we'll be back at our usual time next week, 7:30 Eastern, here on twitch.tv/RoloT. We have our previous episodes uploaded to weeklymangarecap.podbean.com if you just want the audio version. The video version's on youtube.com/weeklymangarecap and has an opening sequence by Malajack Stillitz and Winsdale Cheddar. Also occasionally has title cards done by Steve Man, whose artwork you can check out by just searching for Steve Man Art. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/weeklymangarecap, if you want bonus episodes and to monetarily support the show. Wherever this podcast is posted, you can also click the link to go to our Discord server, talk about the current chapters that have been released, talk about the current recommendation that we're working on, which I'll get into in a minute. Just all sorts of stuff on there, and you can also check out the Google Doc maintained by Ninja X3i, where you can check out recommendations for future series, ask a question for a future Q&A episode for us to answer. All sorts of stuff is available on that doc that we would have long forgotten about if not for its existence. And that, I think, will do it after I tell people what the recommendation we're going to be taking for this coming couple episodes is.
Now, Nick, did you also decide that the way you decided to do your recommendations for the start of this year was to write down 5 on a list at a varying level of like absurdity and decide to make your friend guess it instead? Oh, okay.
Nope. Did not do that. I've already decided what my next number is going to be, by the way.
Okay.
But no spoilers.
No spoilers.
But this is a series that I grew attached to reading not week to week, but every couple of weeks in the last few years. And it came to an end while we were working our way through Gamblefish. And so we're going to be looking at Beat and Motion in our next recommendation episode. So that is entirely available through Weekly Shonen Jump's Viz and Manga Plus services if you want to read that with us.
And those are two characters from Jet Set Radio Future, correct?
I don't know what Jet Set Radio is.
Oh, well, fair enough. That would have been a great joke if you had played a lot of Sega Dreamcast games.
I'm sorry, the last Sega game that I played as a kid was, I believe, Super Thunderblade, which was
pretty cool.
Terrible but fun. Yes.
All right, well, that's gonna do it for the manga recap this week. Everybody, bye.